Self-serving. You're here for a reason. You're listening to Troubled Minds Radio.
Broadcasting live from a secret bunker just off the extraterrestrial highway. Somewhere in the desert sands outside of Las Vegas. From somewhere in space-time, loosely labeled Generation X on planet Earth. And asking questions of you in earnest. Into the digital darkness.
Good evening and welcome to Troubled Minds Radio. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and I'm here tonight with my good friend and a good friend of the show, Axel Steele, and we'd like to say hello to all of you who may also have troubled minds. What's going on, guys? Sorry about that hiccup. I think it was streaming to Twitch is what happened, so it was not working, but now we're good. Everything's fine. Thanks for letting me know. I wonder why nobody was in the chat answering back when I was talking. Well, the only one that heard me was Axel, so well, there we go. I got a witness that he was here that I was actually talking. In any case, look, this is the show where we get together and talk about all the things we're not allowed to talk about, guys. We do it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific. And what are those things we're not allowed to talk about? You know what they are. Aliens, conspiracy, the paranormal, the government, academia, the 24-hour news cycle, propaganda, and the general feeling that we live in the upside down. And of course, what we're doing tonight, as you know, we are a good friend here, Axel Steele, with us. We're talking about the Templars. That's right, the Knights Templar. You've heard of these guys, right? They're locked into so many conspiracies all over the world, and it intersects damn near everything. They've stolen every treasure, every famous treasure in antiquity, and hid it under some church in Scotland or something or other. I mean, this one goes deep, and there's so many conspiracies regarding this that we've never actually talked about this directly on this show, just sort of in periphery and some weird, well, this kind of was a thing and that kind of was a thing, and some people said this and some people said that type of stuff, but it's never really been like the topic of conversation. So it's time. We got our ringer tonight, like I said, Axel Steele, history buff. If James is the paranormal expert of troubled minds, then Axel is the history expert of troubled minds. So let's say hi, and then we'll talk about where we're streaming all the rest of that. Axel Steele, welcome. Are you there, my friend? Test 1, 2.
Always a pleasure, Michael.
Hey, pleasure's mine. Pleasure's mine. So you know a little bit about this. You want to tell us? Let's tell everybody a little bit about you and your interest in this type of stuff, and then also where we can find you. I got your Twitter link down below if you want to spread out any other information regarding yourself. By the way, Axel is also the official dungeon master of Troubled Minds, so there's that too. So he's wearing multiple hats these days. But yeah, what's up, my man? Welcome. Your Twitter link is down below. Anything else you want to add about yourself or your interest in this type of stuff before we get going?
As someone who is sort of into secret societies and parapolitics, the Templars show up in a lot of the lore around, say, the Freemasons or other later secret societies. A lot of people want to claim descent from the Templars. They were kind of a group that they were only around for a couple of hundred years, and they got largely dissolved very suddenly. And they kind of were bigger than life characters even when they were around. And so just a lot of mythology has gotten built up around them. And of course, they got dissolved over accusations of heresy and like worshiping a demon and that kind of stuff. And so a lot of different occult groups worshiping Bahamut specifically, and a lot of different occult groups from, Aleister Crowley, and those sorts of people have taken Bahamut on as like important figure in their own occult theories. And so that's another reason why the Templars keep showing up.
Okay, appreciate that. And like I said, they're pretty much tied into nearly everything. There's so many conspiracies you can kind of track these guys back to. And I was reading a bunch on this tonight, just in the, in terms of the history, in terms of what like they say, and the Friday the 13th stuff, and we're going to get into all that tonight. But I mean, it almost seems like if you want to find the Templars anywhere regarding conspiracies, they're there, man. Like it's so strange to me that they seem to be like intertwined in this like even modern like global conspiracy of like taking over, not just like the world itself, sort of the new world order situation, but also like kind of consolidating religions into one global religion and all kinds of weird stuff. It's just super strange how this all kind of comes together, right? It's in weird ways. I don't think this is probably healthy ways, if you know what I'm saying.
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, there's the combining all religions into one religion is a weird thing to try and peg on the actual Knights Templars, who, heretics or not, were fiercely committed to Christianity alone. Basically, I mean, they were not very friendly to people of other religions. I mean, they were knights of a holy order that were involved in a 200-year-long war in the Levant. So that one doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But yeah, they do show up a lot of places. I think part of it, is just because they disappeared so suddenly. They were so important to the 12th and 13th centuries in Christendom, and they just basically got dissolved in a matter of years once the last of the Crusader states got conquered by Muslims, and the Christian kingdoms were forced out of the Middle East.
Yeah, 100%. So thank you for being here tonight, and we're going to get into all this stuff in just a sec here. Just kind of whetting your appetite with a little bit of what's to come. But before we do that, a few things real quick. We're so as usual, right? We do this to include you. This is Axel, good friend here. He's always in the after chat with us, and we're just hamming it up, talking about all kinds of stuff. But in the one interest of transparency as part of this show has always been, you can call in, you can be part of this, you can ask questions to me or Axel here, and just kind of give us your thoughts on this. Like I said, let's keep this clean. Let's not. I mean, there's a lot of like anti-Semitic type stuff that goes along with these Templar conspiracies. Let's just leave that out, please. I'm not into that. I'm not. I don't think it's relevant. And so let's just be cool. Let's be chill. Let's not do any of that stuff. Okay. So there we go. There you go. Yeah. Right. So there you go. There you go. That Donna just said it in the chat. No. We're leaving that out entirely. Like I said, I don't think it's relevant, and I don't buy into any of that crap anyway. But okay. So what we're doing, if you want to be part of the show tonight, 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. And you can click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. It's as easy as that. And also, we're streaming on Rockfin, YouTube, DLive, and Twitter. And of course, we're broadcasting live on the Fringe FM. And Fringe is in need again, guys. If you want to help, please. If you enjoy the Fringe FM, doing a fundraiser this week, just to make sure it stays on the air and gets the bills paid and the rest of this. It is a listener-funded station, and Joe Roop's going to be doing a whole lot of extra work this week, trying to catch up and get things done where they need to be. Right. So if you want to help out, quick link for you. Please go to fringe.fm/donations, and every little bit helps. I appreciate that so much. And like I said, a lot of great programming, lots of great things happening with Fringe. So as always, right, it's one of those things where you don't really pay money to listen. It's free, and it's free, and it's free, and it's free. But in the end, somebody's footing that bill. So if you would be so kind, fringe.fm/donations. All right, let's do it. Let's get to it, Axel. So regarding again this whole bit with the Templars, like I said, the conspiracies go like we're talking about like the Holy Grail. We're talking about the Ark of the Covenant. We're talking about the Spear of Destiny. I mean, there's so many things. You can literally say that they stole like the treasure from underneath Solomon's temple, and I mean it goes on and on and on and on. So we'll get into a lot of that, but let's start at the beginning here regarding the Templars themselves. Now, before any in terms of everything and anything, before there was something, there was nothing. So where did they begin? Where did this whole history of the Crusades and the Templars actually start? Why don't we begin there? Probably as good as any place.
So the First Crusade led to the establishment of the Christian Kingdom of Jerusalem, where Jerusalem was the capital, and there were several other cities in that area that had been conquered by the Crusaders. I think that's like 1099. Our story picks up with the Templars about a generation later. What had happened was that there was basically continuous fighting between the various Muslims, which at this point in time weren't unified. The Egyptian Caliphate was Shiite, and then sort of the Turks were Sunni. And so they weren't unified in opposition to the Christian kingdoms. But in the year, basically all starts in 1120. What happened is that, Christianity has always had kind of a complicated relationship with, say, like the priesthood and violence, because, famously Christ himself preached pacifism a lot, and there was the idea that priests shouldn't fight. But there was, during the Crusades, there had been times when priests had fought, or they had taken battlefield command of troops and stuff like that. And there was some desire to codify this. Like, could you have a holy order that also was a martial order, which hadn't happened until that point yet? And then in 1120, there was something called the Council of Nablus in Jerusalem, which was attended by King Bernard II, the current Christian monarch of Jerusalem, and basically all the important priests there. And like most Catholic, it was basically a meeting about laws and bylaws for religious orders. Like most of them was mostly concerned with sex and about how, most sex should be illegal. But stuck in there was a provision saying that it was possible for priests to legitimately take up arms and serve militarily, and that killing infidels basically wasn't a sin. So it was okay for them to do that. And then later that year, and obviously this was pre-planned, but later that year, a small group of knights who, with the help of King Bernard II, formed the Templars. It's a little unclear how many there were originally, not very many, but King Bernard formed them into a group. They didn't have permission from the Pope to do it yet, so they weren't an official holy order. They were sort of like unofficial at the time. And then in a sort of ludicrously generous offer, they were given control of the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount, which is it's one of two mosques on the Temple Mount. There's the Dome of the Rock, and then there's the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It was built, I think, like in the 800s, but it was basically a palace. It was King Bernard II's largest estate in the city of Jerusalem before he handed it over to them. So it was very prime real estate. I mean, the Temple Mount's the third holiest site in Islam. It's an important Christian holy site. It's the holiest site in the Jewish religion. And so it is a little weird. He basically gave these guys a palace and gave it for them to control. But that is more or less where they started. About a decade later, in 1129, some of them, including the first Grand Master of the Templars, Hugh de Payans, Payans, the place in Champagne, France, was where he was from originally. All these names are going to be a first name where they're from, because they didn't have last names yet. But he and some of the other Templars, and I think King Bernard too, they traveled to Europe. One of the main reasons for doing that is they wanted to get permission from the Pope to actually turn the Templars into a holy order, which they succeeded in doing in 1129, basically by recruiting a well-known theologian, Saint Bernard of not Bernard, sorry. Yeah, it is Bernard. Lots of Bernards here. Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, who at the time was basically a poster. Like, he would just write letters to noblemen and the popes and bishops constantly talking up the Templar project, saying they were doing all this great work in the Holy Land and they needed people's support. He would later become a saint. And they got him on board, and they did get the Pope to agree to make them an official holy order. The first militant holy order. There would be other ones later on, but they were the first. I guess I should say what they were doing. Officially, they got formed in order to protect pilgrims that were traveling to and from the Holy Land. And by all accounts, they did do that. It wasn't just a cover story, but that's basically where the situation started.
the old again, right? We can start with cover stories and conspiracies literally from go. Like and that's how crazy this like Templar stuff is. It's like I said, you can pretty much tie them to probably any conspiracy you want. But okay, so that was the thing, and that's what I learned too in school and all the rest of that they were actually just sort of the protection force, because there was that pilgrimage to the Holy Land from Europe, and right, it was dangerous, right? Because clearly and obviously you have to take you can't just hop on a plane back then. You got to get like a wagon and the whole thing, and bring like whatever you're going to have with you, including food and money to trade with and all kind. I mean, you're like an easy target for bandits, right, from here to there. So it kind of tracks that something like that was necessary. Okay, I mean, just in those terms, we're you're the dungeon master, for crying out, Axel. I mean, what's more fun than bandits on the road, right?
There are contemporaneous accounts of pilgrims that traveled to the Holy Land around this time, and yeah, there were constant problems with raids and bandits. The roads weren't very safe. The land was pretty inhospitable to people who weren't native to there from Europe, and doing pilgrimages was very trendy. I mean, it was a very big thing. Doing pilgrimages was a way to atone for your sins. It was, I guess, also what else are you going to do? It's the 1100s. But it was also big. It was also a big moneymaker for the places in the Holy Land. I want to correct one thing. Sorry, the King of Jerusalem isn't another Bernard. It was Baldwin. It's just too many B names for me. So King Baldwin II was the King of Jerusalem at the time. But yeah, it was a big moneymaker. And the Templars, they really caught on very quickly. They had Saint Bernard was a well-respected theologian and had the ear of a lot of monarchs and stuff. But also, the thing was that at this time, the Crusades were still very popular. I mean, a second one's going to get started in a couple years, for that matter. And the Templars found it very easy to raise money, because you personally, if you're a rich guy, if you're a nobleman in France and England and Spain, you probably don't want to travel to Jerusalem yourself to fight. But these guys are fighting in Jerusalem, and so you can give them money, you can give them lands, you can give them income streams. And so they did really start raising a ton of money very quickly. And a lot of that was helped by the fact that the Pope, it wasn't in 1129, but it was shortly afterwards, issued a decree saying that the Templars were kind of like a nation unto themselves. They only answered to the Pope, so they didn't have to pay taxes. They didn't have to tithe to the church, because the Catholic Church was still extremely powerful in Western Europe. And also, when they collected rents or money, normally if you were like an order of monks and a king gave you a bunch of money, you would have to give most of that to your bishop. And it would sort of go up the chain and float its way back to Vatican City. But the Templars didn't have to do that. They were allowed to keep funds they raised for their own use. They didn't have to put it up the chain. And while that seems like it was only a small I don't think they did this for this reason, but that small change to that they worked differently than other holy orders meant that they were really able to amass immense amounts of money. They basically funded the Second Crusade on their own at the end of the day, for example. And it's also why I think this is kind of why sometimes some anti-Semitic stuff attaches to them. It also means that eventually they basically became the first international bank, because they had a lot of money and they would make loans to people that wanted to go on pilgrimages. You would give your local Templar office money. They would give you a token that you could then get money back out of at another Templar office once you got to the Holy Land. So you didn't have to travel around with like a bunch of cash.
Yeah, and again, so like just in terms of like utility, you can't taking a little treasure chest full of gold, right? Like in a wagon without protection it's stupid. It's just stupid to a land you haven't been to. Again, treacherous road. I can't say it. Say treacherous roads 3 times fast. But I mean that's the thing, right? So there's utility here, but you cannot create some sort of like early banking system without immense wealth, because you got to be able to cover on both ends whatever people want to travel with, right? So, and that's part of where this conspiracy kind of happens as well, regarding the Templars and their treasures and that whole Temple of Solomon and the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail, and good God, like whatever treasure you want to attach to them. Like I said, they've been attached to pilfering all of that, or let's say coming into wealth sort of, let's say, unnaturally, unexpectedly, right? Because you don't just simply snap your fingers and you're mega wealthy, super rich. There's usually a process behind that, a very obvious process. But part of that conspiracy regarding their, the early banking and the rest of that is they're like, well, where did they get all this damn money from? So we got a couple minutes left if you want to talk on that real quick, and then we'll dip into the rest of this as we get after the bottom of the hour.
I think a lot of it just was the phenomenon of, like, they were kind of the modern day. They kind of were the medieval version of sort of like maybe the Ukraine stuff that's going on right now, or some other popular cause. Like, the equivalent of Western Europe's NATO at the time was just willing to give them tons of assets because protecting the Holy Land was seen as this very important project for Christendom, and they were sort of the frontmen. They were the ones, they weren't just, they took vows of chastity and poverty and stuff like that, and so it's unclear to what extent they kept all those, but they took the vows. So you weren't just handing your money over to a king or some knights that would waste it on frippery or blow it on something. You were handing it over to these people that were widely seen as like the best of the knights. They weren't just knights, they were also monks. And so, you got to get your piety points by giving them stuff in a way that giving donations to random noble people who were going to the Holy Land to fight, it just didn't ring the same. They were like a charity with a very good PR, basically.
Yeah, and again, right? It's one of those things where it is what it is. I mean, this is like a utility back in the day. You can't, like I said, you can't just travel with gold in a chest. You're going to get robbed. You're going to get killed. So it was a couple things. It was protection. It was a way to travel and exchange the token on one end to the other end, and be able to pick up your money without exposing yourself as a easy mark from here to there. Like I said, and this is why a lot of this ends up in some really weird spots. But I don't know. It gets deeper. It gets even crazier as this kind of continues. Because, well, as always, right? We're talking about fighting in the Middle East, and we're talking about crusades, and that's a very, very let's say, dark topic. Would you say a lot of people died, Axel?
Yeah, I mean, we're probably not going to do a blow by blow of all the massacres that happened, but there were a lot of massacres on both sides of the conflict. A lot of cities getting sacked and a big chunk of the population being killed off. Yeah, it wasn't very pleasant.
Yeah, it was not very pleasant, as usual, right? You can't have a good story without some nice, butchering peasants along the way. And I say that in the most grotesque term, of course. So what we're doing tonight, we're talking about the Templar conspiracies. We're here with my good friend Axel Steele, the official historian of Troubled Minds. He'll reject that, but he just is. He knows a lot more about this than I do, and pops in from time to time with some great knowledge. So what do you think about this? As we go tonight, what do you know about these Templar conspiracies? Do you think they're real? Do you think they're overblown? Do you think that a lot of this is just tied into some modern BS, and that's so disconnected anymore that we find ourselves, let's say, making up stories to connect the past to the future? You tell me. Love to hear your thoughts. 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. This is Troubled Minds. I'm Michael Strange. We're here with Axel Steele talking about the Templar conspiracies. Don't go anywhere. More after the break with Axel, and of course your calls. Be right back. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and we are streaming on Rockfin, YouTube, DLive, and Twitter, and we are broadcasting live on the Fringe FM. Tonight, we're talking about the conspiracies, the history, and the drama, the international deep-time drama of the Templar conspiracies. What do you know about this? Why is this still on the minds of people today when this was centuries ago, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me in many ways. It's sort of like a disconnected sort of group of conspiracies. But in those terms, well, I'm not the expert. I'm not the expert in a lot of things. And so that's why I think these discussions are super important to get together and find out what, not just what you know about it, but what you may know that we don't know. Like I said, please let's not disparage any religions or any of the rest of that, any groups of people. That's not why we're doing this. We're doing this in sort of the larger conspiracy terms. So what do you know about the Templars? What do you know about those conspiracies associated? And please, let's keep it clean. 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. Real quick, too, before we get going, please, if you enjoy programming on the Fringe FM, looking for some scratch to keep the Fringe on the air. If you could spare a few bucks or even spread the word and kind of let individuals know that just a few bucks goes a long way. Fringe.fm/donations, and please give what you can. Appreciate that very much. And let's get back to Axel Steele. Test 1 2. Are you there, my friend?
Oh, I'm here.
Right on. Chilling. How's that wine? How's the maybe juice?
It's fine.
It's fine. I got a little myself. It's all good. All right. So where were we regarding? Okay. So we got this. The basic. This is the part of the history that most people know, right? We're talking about the early Crusades. We're talking about the formation of the Knights Templar as not just sort of a military service to guard pilgrimage from Europe to the Levant and the Holy Land, but also a sort of maybe the first international banking system with, as you described, kind of cashing in, getting a token. Handing your money over and then retrieving your money on the other side after the dangerous journey has commenced. So that's the obvious part here. But then also, like I said, these conspiracies get deep and wild because you can connect it to anything conspiracy-wise. Again, like I said, Ark of the Covenant, the whole Spear of Destiny, all the rest of this. But let's get back to where we left off with you. Let's whatever do you want to say, my friend?
All right. I suppose I should describe the way the Templars were structured just a little bit. So when we think of the Templars, we think of the guys in the chainmail with the white tabards that has the red cross on it, right? But even at the height of their power, there maybe was like 15,000 people in the Templar Order, but they never fielded more than about 1,000 knights. Most of the people in the Templars were other men-at-arms, sergeants in the Holy Land. And then outside the Holy Land, they had all these estates that they had been gifted. And they'd use their money to buy more land and stuff like that. And so you also had a whole network of administrators in Western Europe, clerics, people that were just managing estates and stuff like that. And the Templars also were very big into building castles. And so they also had a lot of masons. Dun, dun, dun. That will come up later. Sorry if you're hearing my dog barking.
That's all right. We love Xander.
but yeah, they had a lot of masons. That might come up later. I also should note that they weren't the only knightly order. The other big one is the Hospitallers, who started as just regular monks that would take care of wounded. But after the Templars kind of broke the seal on you could be knights and monks, basically, the Hospitallers also eventually became a militant order, and they're important too because they come back around into the story reasonably soon. I guess though, if we're just going to run down their history really quick, in 1144, the kings of France and Germany basically both traveled to the Holy Land with their associated armies in what would become the Second Crusade. It is pretty much a disaster. Their armies aren't very well. This is important for the Templar legend, though. Their armies weren't very well disciplined. In fact, the French army almost gets wiped out before they even get to Jerusalem. They're forced to cross. They go to Constantinople, and they're going across Asia Minor to get to the Levant. And they basically, the King of France doesn't have very good control over his men. They get split up trying to cross basically a like a little mountain range, and they get ambushed. Their baggage train gets destroyed. It looks like they managed to fight off the ambush, but things look really bad. And in an unprecedented move, the King of France, I think it's Louis VII, he just turns over command of his army to the Templars, because in the fight with the ambushers, the Templars are basically the only people that had their act together and were a functioning fighting force. And so he puts the Templars in charge. And the Templars do sort of get his army into shape pretty quickly with like very basic things that the army wasn't aware of, like you need to follow orders and you can't just do what you want in a fight. We have to work together. And so that sort of ups the reputation. Also at this point, the king of Germany is King Conrad II. He wasn't in this particular battle, but eventually they regroup. Both kings are out of money and can't really keep their armies funded. And so the Templars do use a substantial portion of their cash at that point to pay to continue the Second Crusade, which also is sort of a big point for them because it meant they were willing to put their money where their mouth was. They weren't just hoarding the money for their own reasons. If they needed to spend it to fund a crusade, they were willing to do it. The Second Crusade started because the city of Edessa was conquered by the Sunni Muslims. But by the time the Crusade actually got together, they decided it wasn't really worth the effort to try and take Edessa back because, like, the Christians in the city had largely been killed or displaced at that point, and so they couldn't really. There wasn't really anything to save, and it was kind of far away and inconveniently located. And so they attempted to take. They attempted to besiege and take over Damascus in Syria. This attempt fails. It's basically a huge disaster. The Second Crusade doesn't really go anywhere, but it did give the Templars their reputation for being the best fighters. People would call them the Franks, just as a general term for like people from Western Europe. But it cemented them as being the best fighters that the Franks could put forward, and it cemented their reputation as really being willing to do what it says on the tin, so to speak. And the Second Crusade is also important because it didn't just happen in the Holy Land. There was actually also substantial fighting in Spain and what would become Portugal, because the Moors still controlled the southern and eastern parts of that country at that time. And this is important because it is a place where the Templars actually fought in Western Europe rather than just fighting in the Holy Land. And this will also become later on because when things go south for the Templars, Spain and Portugal were much less willing to go along with persecuting them because there had been a living history of the Templars fighting in those lands for the monarchies there. And so even when France turned on them, is what happens eventually, like Spain and Portugal weren't willing to do it.
Yeah, we'll get to that too. That's that whole. This is why we were talking about doing this Templar show this past week. But I think we kind of stretched it to get it to Monday as close as Friday the 13th as possible. As you guys know, this past Friday was Friday the 13th. We don't do a Trouble Mind show on Friday. It's just sort of a quick news show. But it makes sense to try and get this as close to that as possible because that day, at least in legend, plays prominently in not just the Knights Templar legend, but their downfall as well. And what we can talk about that parallel Order 6 execute Order 66, right? I think it was pretty much lifted from the Knights Templar Friday the 13th thing for that Star Wars bit. But okay, so what do you guys know about this? As we get into this, why do you think the Knights Templar are still on the minds of conspiracy-minded folks, and let's say even other people today? Why do you think people still talk about this? This is, again, we're going back to the First, the Second Crusades. We're talking about, not just sort of a security force for protection, but the first international banking system. What's actually happening with this? How come people are still fascinated today? What do you know about this? Why do you think it's still in the zeitgeist? And why, for instance, are we even talking about these guys? So what do you guys know? And I'd love to hear your thoughts. 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. It's as simple as that. Come talk to Axel, talk to myself. And so up to this point, Axel, do you think there's anything super nefarious regarding, let's say, the Knights Templar in their history? Do you think something happened that maybe stands out as, I don't know, some catalyst that sort of catapulted this conspiracy into the 21st century? Or do you think it's still innocuous to this point?
Oh, I mean, I don't think it has to do with the Knight Templars specifically, but it is around the same time or after the Second Crusade. How familiar are you with, say, like the legend of the Fisher King, or Percival in the story of the Grail, because this is how basically the Holy Grail gets attached to them.
Yeah, so I know a little bit about Percival and the Holy Grail. I don't know the Fisher King. So if you can brief us there.
All right. I mean, it's this 12th century. So this is when the Templars are active. It's around this time. It was written in the late 12th century. It's a romance by a French writer, Crétin de Troyes. And it was extremely popular. He died before finishing it, and later authors added a bunch of stuff to it. But it's basically a story of it's a story that's attached to the Arthurian mythos. It's a story of the knight Percival. King Arthur sort of sends him out. He has quests and stuff. But one day he comes to a castle. It's ruled by a wounded king, and that's the guy that the Fisher King gets attached to. And the Fisher King has the Holy Grail, although it's actually not really a cup in that story. It's more like a serving dish. But still, that's like kind of the origin of the Holy Grail story. And also in the story, the king has a spear that is not named the Spear of Destiny, but is clearly supposed to be that. It is a spear that's mystically shedding blood because it was presumably supposed to be the spear that stabbed Christ. And in the story, the knights at the castle, while the author does not specifically say they're Templars that are in charge of guarding the relics, it is about as heavy-handed as possible that they're basically Templars. And that is kind of how, because the Templars were actually around then. And that's kind of how in my opinion, that's kind of, I think, the first instance of like that idea getting connected to the Templars, is they were basically in this very well-regarded piece of Templar fan fiction, which took off.
That's a good way to put it. Okay, and so it sticks. Some interesting parallels here too. So, like I said, I like talking about the treasure, the Holy Grail, the Spear of Destiny, and all the rest of this stuff, right? But I think that there's some other bizarre Templar stuff in modern times that we're still doing. Like they got stuff on History Channel, right? Shout out to Catalina over there on Fringe Discord, Sean G as well, talking about this stuff. But Catalina, it says, follow Curse of Oak Island. Have you seen that at all? Are you familiar with that, Axel? The Curse of Oak Island?
Yeah, there's the legend that the Templars got all the way to Nova Scotia and buried their treasure there. I was gonna bring it up. I was gonna bring it up later when we get to what people think happened after they dissolved.
Gotcha. All right. So we'll get your take on it then when it actually comes up naturally in the story. Okay. But like I said, it's wild, right? We got Rosslyn Chapel in is that Scotland, Ireland? I don't know where that is. You got Nova Scotia involved in this with the Curse of Oak Island. You've got again, the world over, we got the treasure from the Temple of Solomon, which includes literally the Ark of the Covenant, they said, and wild stuff. I mean, if you got to like we're many centuries removed and kind of reading contemporary sources on a lot of this stuff, including the interwebs, which is roll your eyes most of the time, right? But in those terms, like how accurate do you think some of this stuff is regarding sort of a lost hidden treasure that the Templars were able to maybe pilfer or get away with, or what made them suddenly rich? Do you think there's anything to that story, or is that just an ugly portion of this?
I don't think they. I think the story of how they got rich is people just gave them lots of money. Now, to the extent that maybe they certainly did have relics. Al-Aqsa Mosque is legendarily supposed to be built on the site of Solomon's Temple, although that probably isn't actually, to the extent there was a first temple built by someone we might want to say is King Solomon, it probably wasn't actually on the Temple Mount. It was probably somewhere else in Jerusalem, and they built another temple on the Temple Mount before it got sacked by the Babylonians. It's like a whole thing. But there is a question of to what extent did the Templars not get all their money confiscated by the church and the French government when it eventually fell apart. And I mean, my guess is we know they still did have a lot of money after those events. So, I mean, it's possible that they stashed a treasure somewhere. I don't think it's in Nova Scotia, to be honest with you. I don't think I'm hard pressed to see how the boats of the early 14th century would have been capable of crossing the Atlantic Ocean. But if the Oak Island Tourism Board gets some people to come up there for it, who am I to complain about it?
Yeah, right. By the way, I'm really sorry. That's Scotland, not Ireland, the Rosalind Chapel. I know in some places, if you make that mistake, you'll get stabbed. So please forgive me. Okay, but all right. So maybe there was some shenanigans. You think people gave him lots of money? I mean, right? Doesn't it go back to good old fashioned capitalism in some sense? Hey, if you provide a service people want, people are going to give you lots of money, aren't they?
Oh yeah, you also have the clergy of the Catholic Church telling everyone that the maintenance of the Christian kingdoms and the Holy Land is of great importance, and handing out indulgences and other things to get people to donate money. I mean, they did have a whole so the Catholic Church at this point in time. This is really before the era of like absolute monarchs in Europe. Like kings had pretty limited power outside their own lands, and so the Catholic Church was easily like the most powerful institution in Western Europe. And so if they told people to do something, they were pretty eager to do it. This kind of changes when we get towards the end of the Templar era. It's one of the reasons why they were vulnerable, because when you get to like the early 14th century, you start late 13th, early 14th century, you start having the development of like the monarchies of England and France becoming more centralized and the king becoming more powerful, and then maybe not being so happy with these kind of unaccountable knights owning a bunch of land, hanging out in their countries.
Okay, so as always, right? It's complicated. I mean, we're talking about the church, who, is notorious for being like super rich, pretty much forever, because people just send them a ton of money, and they always have, and they still do. I mean, they got their own private country, for crying the F out loud, right? So, I mean, it's complicated. It's always complicated. But regarding treasure, remains to be seen, I guess. I think we can say for sure that the Ark of the Covenant hasn't resurfaced. I think we can probably say that accurately.
You know about how there's that church in Ethiopia that claims to have it.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm willing to believe it.
Okay, all right. You can't get in there, but
No, they won't let you see it.
They won't let you see it. All right, so you're willing to believe it may actually be there for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's kind of like how everyone knows the Holy Grail is in this church in southern Spain.
Yeah,
I can't remember the name. I can't remember the name of the church now. Oh, there is a church that probably has the most credible claim to having something that might be the Holy Grail that's in southern Spain. But and Pope, not the Pope Benedict, the last Pope, not the current one. He made some comment at a mass that they had brought that what might be the Holy Grail to the Vatican to be used in the mass, and he made some comment that was basically like, I can't say this is the Holy Grail, but
hey, yeah, there's nothing greater than a mystery, especially regarding the Holy Grail. I mean, look, we got Indiana Jones found the Holy Grail, right? We got Percival and the Holy Grail. I mean, there's a whole lot of this goes back a long ways, and it's in the zeitgeist. I mean, this is one of those things where people are super fascinated with these, iconic religious artifacts. I mean, why not? I'm not even a religious guy, but I think this stuff is fascinating as hell. What happened to this stuff? But I mean, we're talking about things that break, things that get melted, things that may have been super important at some time but not another time. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, if it got trampled into dust at some point, I'm perfectly willing to believe that as well. But what are you guys willing to believe regarding not just, again, the Templars? We're talking about those conspiracies. Again, please, we're not going to crap on Christianity or Muslims or Jews or anything in between, right? We're not doing this tonight. We're not doing this anytime on Troubled Minds. So leave that out of it. But think in terms of, right, and I say that because a lot of this ugliness is kind of connected in some ways, and you start talking like this and you kind of bring out the worst in people sometimes. So look, what do you believe regarding this? Like I said, why is it still here? If you got to make one call, okay, so we're going to get to the Masons coming up, of course, right? But do you think that at some point, why are we still fascinated, Axel? Like, I love history, and I love these ideas of the Crusades, and again, massacres and all the rest of that, right? Who doesn't love a good, have fun storming the castle story? But in terms of why? For instance, why are we talking about them tonight? Well, if you got to give me one theory on that, why does this still stick? Why does anybody care?
I mean, I do think the history is good, and there's a lot of sort of romance in romance in a Hugh Grant movie, but romance in the sort of 18th century romantic tradition here. I mean, you have a lot of bigger, larger than life characters and institutions. You have the Templars, you have Saladin, you have Richard the Lionheart, you have the Assassins, who are all going to show up here in a minute before you're all going to show up in the story very quickly. So yeah, there's a lot of like exciting characters and exciting stuff that happens.
Okay, fantastic. So very much in the vein of, that's why I had said have fun storming the castle, in the vein of Princess Bride-ish, that type of romance, right? Where it's like every story has an origin and a resolution and some action in between. And so what do you guys know about this? What's up? Night Stalker says, I got some maybe juice for you, I think. Perfect. Love to hear your thoughts. So that's what we're doing tonight, guys. We're talking about the Templar conspiracies, okay? How real is this? Why are we still talking about this today? Not just us in terms of like this show. We've never talked about this on Troubled Minds ever in 4+ years. We've never really kind of broached this topic. Not one, because I don't know a crap ton about it. That's why thanks to Axel Steele stepping in here and being able to fill in a lot of the blanks of my knowledge gaps. But then also, like, I kind of know a lot more of the pop culture type stuff, and it still confuses me. I do like the romance and the, like the swords and the swashbuckling action, but I mean, in reality, that's just, people butchering each other. so that makes it less fun once you grow up a little bit and know what's really going on. So what are your thoughts on this? Why are we still talking about this in the 21st century? And what is happening with the Templars? Do you think they actually maybe faded away, or do you think they maybe morphed into something else? What do you know about this? Do you think they found any secret treasures? I think Lily in the chat said, I can guess maybe they were tomb robbers at some point, and maybe that's how they got this type of wealth. I don't know. What do you believe regarding this? What have you heard? Comment on that, Axel. We got about 30 seconds.
I mean, they did end up with a bunch of saint relics at one point in time. That comes into the accusations made against them. I mean, it's possible. I mean, I don't. I off the top of my head, I can't think of what tombs they would have been robbing, but like that definitely. I mean, they certainly looted. I mean, this was the era where one of the reasons why people would go on crusade or they would go just fight amongst themselves is that if you sack a city, you get to keep all the stuff. And so the Templars certainly did engage in that. Like they would raid Turk and I can't remember what the actual polity was, but they'd raid Muslim caravans and baggage trains and stuff. They would steal stuff. Everyone was stealing stuff back then.
Of course, right? And like you said, that was part of the excitement. If you go to war, right, you can get killed, but also if you win, the spoils of war, always calling, always beckoning. Back to George Orwell, the boot on the neck of humans forever. Well, it didn't start here. It started a long time ago. What do you know about the Templar conspiracies? Is this stuff real? Do you think there's anything to it anymore? Why are we still talking about it? Why is anybody talking about it? Love to hear your thoughts, what you know about this. 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. This is Troubled Minds. I'm Michael Strange. We're here with my good friend Axel Steele talking about the Templar conspiracies. What do you know? Is there something we know or we should know? Give us a call. Don't go anywhere. Troubled Minds, Mike and Axel, and the Templars. When we return, be right back. We are talking about the alien abduction phenomenon.
The aliens are looking through your eyes and they're accessing your optic nerve. I'm doing that. And through that optic nerve, they're transferring to your brain. People are random images as they traverse neurons in your brain.
So all right. So maybe,
and they also feel them planting or receiving memories, or ideas, or images.
Broadcasting live from a secret bunker just off the extraterrestrial highway. Somewhere in the desert sands outside of Las Vegas. From somewhere in space-time, loosely labeled Generation X on planet Earth. And asking questions of you in earnest into the digital darkness.
Yo ho, yo ho. Welcome to Troubled Minds Radio. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and tonight we're here with my good friend Axel Steele as we talk about the idea of the Templars, the Templar conspiracies. Why are they still persisting into the 21st century? Why is this something that still kind of tickles the imagination of people we're talking about the First and Second Crusades. This is centuries ago. And some things, as I hate to say it, right? Some things change quite a lot, but some things never change. And in those terms, well, we're still fighting with each other. The Levant is still highly contested in many ways. It's still, right? It's still, I don't know. Like, what would you say about this? Why are we still enthralled with the idea of the Templars and that whole conspiracy? Is it the treasure? Is it Oak Island? Is it the Holy Grail? Is it the Ark of the Covenant? That's what we're talking about tonight, just in no uncertain terms, or maybe some certain terms. I don't know. It depends on who you ask. But so what we're doing tonight, as usual, right? We're streaming on Rockfin, YouTube, DLive, and Twitter, and we're taking your calls, of course. Wait. Rockfin, YouTube, DLive, Twitter, broadcasting live on the Fringe FM, and we're taking your phone calls. If you want to be part of the show tonight, 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. And the question is, as we continue, what do you know about the Knights Templar, and why are we still talking about them? What is still the church in Ethiopia, the Ark of the Covenant, all the rest of the stuff? It kind of fits in the Rosalind Chapel and the Holy Grail, and it ties into King Arthur and Sir Percival. And I mean, it's weird. It's weird how this kind of traces back, depending on who you ask, right? So that's what we're doing tonight. Real quick, too, before we get back to Axel and Night Stalker here, we're also doing a fundraiser for Fringe. If you want to be part of that, please, if you enjoy the Fringe FM and all the great programming that goes along with that, you can spare a few bucks. Please do at, that would be fringe.fm/donations. And like I said, at some point, somebody's got to pick up the bills for all the free radio listening that everybody gets. And this helps keep it on the air. The business model is transitioning to something different and more sustainable. So so hopefully this is one of the last times we got to ask for that. So if you can spend a few bucks, appreciate that very much. I'll drop that link in the chat as we go. But okay, so let's get back to Axel. What's up, brother? Welcome back. Everything okay over there?
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. Everything's good. Cheers, my friend.
Everything's good.
Right on. Thanks for being here with us tonight, and thanks for volunteering to do this. Okay, so we got Night Stalker here. Before we get back to that, you want to just give us the quick recap on where we're at so far. We talked about the Templar history, sort of the First and Second Crusades. We talked about how Portugal and Spain plays a big role, as well as France. We haven't quite got to the juicy stuff yet with the Execute Order 66 and the Friday the 13th and the rest of that. But there are still these rumors that persist about the knights themselves, how they became rich, kind of overnight, right? In those terms, of course, overnight today on the internet, you can become rich if you go viral. I guess, was this the original virility, would you say?
I mean, at some level, yeah, it was. At this point, we're after the Second Crusade. The Knights have been around for about 30 years at this point. But yeah, early on, they really caught on fast. A lot of people got very into their story very quickly when we're willing to willing to subscribe to their podcast.
Yeah, right. Smash that subscribe button. Okay. So then they're doing their thing, and we'll get to the rest of this as we go. But anything you want to crack in here before we get to the Night Stalker?
No, let's get Night Stalker on here.
Let's do it. All right. Looking to hear your thoughts on this, guys. What do you know about the Templar conspiracies? How real is this? And do you think that there's still a reason? Why are we still talking about this today? 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at Troubled Minds. Just like this. Derek in Massachusetts. Welcome to Troubled Minds, the Night Stalker. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Mike. Hey, Axel. Hey, Xander. What's going on, you guys?
What's up, man? How are you? Chilling, doing our thing, man. Talking about crazy stuff by dark of night. You know us. What do you know about this? You did bring up the Rosalind Chapel, the Rose Lions. I'm not going to force you into that. You start wherever you want to start. I'm sure you got some good stuff for us.
Hey, I want to fill up you guys' holy grails with some maybe juice tonight. I wanted to give Axel the first hour to really give us the history lesson on it, because that was a amazing job, Axel. You absolutely crushed that the first hour. It's nice to learn stuff. It's nice to, the maybe juice is fun, but it's nice to get some history. It's fun for me.
You're very kind.
But now I'm going to take it off the rails real quick. So
let's do it.
This is purely just maybe just stuff talking. I'm going to butcher some this is my interpretation of definitions. I'm not going to use like the actual. You'll see what I mean. But all right. So the idea of what's their hidden treasure, kind of like how did they get rich all of a sudden? Who are these guys? Like what do they know? And I think they know some wild stuff. And like for example, there's a comic I read a couple years ago. I mentioned it in the chat, but it's called Knights Templar, about like time traveling, like reincarnating Knights Templar, that secretly they have this knowledge of like reincarnation and time travel stuff, so they're popping throughout history and through different generations, kind of guiding humanity that way. And apparently there's like a book, an actual book, Rosalind, Guardian of the Secrets of the Holy Grail by Tim Wallace Murphy and Marilyn Hopkins, where apparently they talk about Sir William St. Clair gaining the spiritual ability to look backward and forwards through time and foresee the dramatic change in human consciousness, when human thinking would gain a new objective to gain mystery over nature itself. The St. Clairs are all wrapped up in the Templar mysteries and all that kind of stuff, which is kind of weird that I didn't realize that until 15 minutes ago, that there was actual some type of possible time travel, weird, seeing the future, seeing the past type connection with the Templars. But that's not where I'm going with it. I'm thinking, my theory, I love the idea of the ley line portal grid, and one of the terms for this ley lines, like the ley line grid or ley lines in general, is like rose lines. Shout out River, shout out James for dragon lines. There's like serpent lines, but like rose lines. So I think rose line is a connection there. But Templar lines, Templar meridians is a big one. There's a book about Templar meridians that really gets deep into the idea of the grid and really like maps out the grid. And if you search ley line maps online, like the one that has all the lines labeled, is most likely, and it's like the multicolored one that has all the circles and sacred geometry shapes in it. Chances are that's from that book. But essentially, the knowledge that they have is the knowledge of this naturally existing connection of ley lines, like how the grid actually is shaped, how these lines connect, where these portal spots are, and the way they acquired their influence and their wealth is being able to travel. So I think this naturally existing grid exists on the planet, but also throughout the cosmos. It weaves the entire cosmos together. So you can hop from planet to planet, Stargate style, but you can also hop from here to where you guys are. And they're traveling. You can do it like just on the planet. So imagine having the ability to travel from here to the Far East, to South America, to the New World, yada yada, 1,000 years before people had ships, or just during a time when all they had was ships. And that's a massive advantage, an advantage that would basically create the first breakaway civilization, pretty much a civilization. It would create the first group of like super powerful elites, basically create a new civilization of people who have access to the entire world's resources instantly. And I think that's basically what the deal is. And yeah, what do you think about that? Just for starters, just like I put my thoughts real quick.
I think it's fantastic. I think it's interesting to put it in terms of, let's say, even if you remove like the ley lines and the portals for just a moment, the first breakaway civilization would be super wealthy, would be outside of the influence of the Catholic Church in wealth and like power, outside of the influence of these other countries, like Axel was saying, sort of these monarchies that aren't really superpowers just yet. They're kind of like a mishmash of fail, and that's a great way to put it. Maybe that's why we're still fascinated with that breakaway civilization. But I do love the idea. Like again, I've read Da Vinci Code. I'm going to ask you this too, Derek. Have you read the Da Vinci Code?
I have. I've seen the movie, but it's been a long time. It's been easily 15 years since I even watched the movie.
Yeah, me too. A long ass time ago. So interesting you bring up the Rosalind Chapel, the Rose Line, and so it plays a huge role in that movie, of course, for a number of reasons. But if it's actually linked to the ley line portal grid, right, that sort of thing, the electromagnetic spectrum of the whatever's happening with the Earth, that's I mean, in terms of breakaway civilizations, hey, you don't get any better than portals, do you?
No, you don't. Exactly. Like people think of the bricklayer civilization in terms of a technology. People finding, usually it's associated with some type of off-world technology or something that people like stash away, hide, and then they're able to cultivate new technologies and have a huge advantage over everyone else. But what if there's some type of like primal technology, some type of just natural technology that is this leyline portal grid, this idea that there is a natural web of energy lines and vortexes that are grid around the planet. And if you have knowledge of this and can manipulate it and kind of control it and can travel through it, yada, yada, that's the controlling nature itself idea. And that's like, you have a grip on the nature of reality. You can control the weather with this. You can do all kinds of stuff with this. But the way you would acquire resources, like where did the money come? I mean, this is one answer for that, And yeah, so I mean, the Rosslyn Chapel gets tied in with the Oak Island stuff, with the idea that like these like the Sinclairs and everything have this map of where this different treasure is. But I think there's the idea that Ethiopia believes that they have the Holy Grail or something like that. So I think part of this is because this natural grid is everywhere. That all these locations, that these mystical sites, these temples or pyramids or Stonehenge, yada, they're all on these vortex spots, on these window areas, on these hot spots, whatever. Places where the veil is thin, where the worlds merge together, or just where these doors are that can pop you out. If you know, I don't know, it would require a long time to have that knowledge, but this is information that shamanic cultures would have throughout history. This is the most important thing. People wouldn't be noticing this forever. So all you would need to do is kind of just have that information and then just kind of take it outside of the collective so the masses don't know it. And then you just have, you're then controlling the world. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. And so I had this one, I had more, like, I could ramble stuff up a lot better this, like probably 4 or 5 years ago. I was more ready with the information, but I had a theory about how the Oak Island, the Sinclairs, it was his name, like Francis Sinclair, whatever. It's tied to the Franciscan order. And the order of St. Francis and the female order of St. Clair, which is the female version of it. And they're both formed relatively around the same time, and I think it's basically their excuse to kind of go around the world, basically snatching up different sacred sites. Basically, so these Knights Templar are like military units, are basically these proto Stargate units for the most part. There's ones that are kind of snatching up these spots, making sure they have control over these areas that, like, every culture all around the world would center around these portal spots. These nodes would be where the center of every culture was, is where you would do your shamanic experiences, is where you have your ceremonies and your rituals for everyone, and they're everywhere. Like, they're all over the place. So in order to get a stranglehold on this, you would have to go around the world and then overtake that culture and then snatch up their holy site. And that's very much, like, we're not pooping on any religion states tonight or anything, but that's a huge criticism of Christianity, is that beneath all these major churches are pagan sites, like Notre Dame is on top of a ancient mound and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's across the board. It's virtually every single one. Like, they're repurposing sacred sites, and it's because these sacred sites have an actual type of energy. They're an actual thing that's just part of the nature of reality. And just when you're aware of that, I don't know. And this is really maybe just talking, but I think they're like the Holy Grail is the leyline portal grid, the natural existing energy grid on the planet throughout the cosmos, and kind of the Ark of the Covenant. I have like the definition of like the Grail just means something that let me see here. The Grail is just a thing that's being pursued or sought after. That, like, if you look at there's two definitions for Grail if you look it up. One is the Holy Grail, which is like the specific one to Jesus, and the other just anything that's pursued. So this is something that would be pursued through millennia. And then an Ark is like a boat, like Noah had, but it's something that affords protection or safety. So I believe that the Ark of the Covenant is the sacred sites that are built on top of the leyline portal grid in order to, and we're not going to get into this. I'm just saying this to complete the thought. But I think the what this is, this whatever this global civilization was, building these sites on the leyline portal grid is what casted out the Lovecraftian old ones. It separates this realm from that realm. So if you, and then I think the negative dark agenda is to collapse this grid and allow these things to come back in. But that's just to complete that thought. We're not going to get into that. But what do you think? That's a lot of rambles, but I think that's the information, that's the knowledge, that's how they have all the power, and they're still doing it, and that's why we're still interested in it, because it's like still pertains to our regular life. That's it.
I love it. Go ahead, Axel.
Sorry.
What are your thoughts, Axel, on the breakaway civilization and the portals and all the rest? Go ahead.
Oh, I don't know. I was just going to say that the Franciscan monks in the Order of St. Clair were formed around this time. They were I think 1209 and 1212 AD. So in terms of timeline, it matches up that they post-date the Templars, but they're in this era where all this stuff was still happening. I guess I'd just be like, if it was, I mean, where would they have gone through? I mean, the
still
leyline
around.
portals.
Where are they gone physically? They just go to other places. You can use it to get to other realms. You can use it to get to other planets. But it goes to. I can go from here to California. I can go from here to South America. It works locally too. So just the ability to travel alone. I mean, obviously portals is woo stuff talking, but just the concept of having a quicker form of travel is such a massive advantage. And you could have control over the entire wealth of the entire planet if you had instant access to the entire planet. Again, this is crazy talk. Obviously, this is dumb, and I took it off the rails. I'm sorry, but these are my Templar thoughts.
Not perfect. This is Troubled Minds. This is exactly why we do this. As you guys know, these conversations non-linear, open-ended, and let's take it wherever we want to take it. Because, of course, as was said in the chat recently, and I love it, we go a little more wide than deep, and that's okay. That's okay to consider all the things. But I think in those terms, right? Like, the leyline portal grid, NASA has confirmed that's actually a thing. They said there's actually portals sort of tucked into the magnetic field. In terms how that actually works, nobody exactly knows.
One example I can give.
Go ahead.
So, again, I was like super. This was like one of my first major actual research investigations, like one where I'm not just regurgitating podcasts and stuff. I'm like, if I was going to write a book, it'd be about this 5 years ago. I've kind of moved on a little bit, but they're in this Templar Meridian book, for example, they have a line that's labeled the Arcadia ley line. So if you kind of search that, that's a term that you might be able to find it. But something that I stumbled on separately from visiting America's Stonehenge, and they pointed out, like, when you walk into America's Stonehenge, they have like a 5-minute video that kind of introduces the concept to you, it's made by the owner of it. And he was saying in the video that his son stumbled on this alignment just by using Google Earth, that on the summer solstice and the winter solstice, it creates a line, that stretches through America's Stonehenge in New Hampshire, across the ocean, smack dab through the center of the real Stonehenge on the solstice days. And then down the other side, like going the opposite direction, I forget which solstice is which, but in the opposite direction goes through Teotihuacan, like the Mayan site in Mexico City. So I dug deep into that, and this same line, it stretches through from Teotihuacan up through like New Orleans, like all the mystical stuff through there, up through the Georgia Guidestones, goes all the way up through Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, Boston, up through America's Stonehenge, up through Nova Scotia, where the Oak Island stuff would be, across the ocean, over through Stonehenge, down through Rosslyn Chapel, down, continues to go up through sacred sites all the way around. And that's just one example that our cities are built on these lines. That's every major city on the East Coast is all along this alignment. And I can post a picture in the chat as soon as I get off the phone. That's crazy. In Manhattan, they call Neil deGrasse Tyson dubbed it Manhattan Henge, but from like 34th Street, there's a whole stretch of blocks, whatever. Maybe all of Manhattan is aligned to the summer solstice. Like, our cities are designed with this knowledge, and I think part of this knowledge is mixed up in this leyline portal knowledge, and then the ones who really have this information, this breakaway civilization, are privy to this and have been using it for a long time. And I don't think it ever went away. into other secret societies. It's just the Space Force. Like this, I'll leave 1 second. But so to make the grid that I found, you use the established meridians that they give us, the ecliptic, which is the path of the sun, and the 7 major river deltas on the planet, and that creates the grid. You can put it on Google Earth, zoom in. It's every major thing you can possibly think of is accounted for on this grid, and then those elements are encoded, I believe, in the Space Force logo. If you look at it, it's the meridians behind, it's the delta logo or the vector symbol, and the ecliptic around it. And that's, I believe, encoding of the fact that it's more Stargate than it is Star Trek, and they're privy to this knowledge. And I know we're running out of time. I'll leave. Axel, you're going deep. We go wide, but you're going deep, and I'm loving it. You're crushing it.
All right.
Mike, great show. I'm sorry for taking it on that.
No, you're
keep
good.
going on what you guys are going on. But
No, you're good. That's why we do it. That's why we do it this way, bro. You're the best. Derek here, real quick, before he takes off. The Night Stalker. Everybody knows him as the Night, Stockeer. Follow him. He's got a YouTube channel. Links in the description down below. Thanks, Derek, for popping in here and giving us your take. Amazing stuff as always.
Guys.
Appreciate it.
Great show.
Thank you. Axel, go ahead. What's your take on that? We got a couple minutes on anything there. You pick what you want to address.
Well, I mean, I know there's lots of stories about castles and stuff being built on these ley lines. I'll admit I'm not a ley line expert, and so I mean, I'm willing to take it as given. I suppose it's possible. I guess I'd be like, I don't. I'm not sure how the Templars would get this secret knowledge, but I'm willing to buy into it. I mean, they themselves weren't really mystics, or at least the Knights were. But saying that, I mean, they did have a lot of people in Western Europe that were of a more intellectual bent. So maybe I'm getting distracted by the propaganda and just thinking about the martial part of the order, and not the fact they also were, academics and theologians and monks and masons and stuff like that.
Yeah, they were at least the most famous order of fighting priests. And if you're like, a priest first and a warrior next, hey man, if we're talking Dungeons and Dragons, that's the first dual classers in history, right? I mean, come on now. This is like a fighter cleric. I'm down. We're here with Axel Steele. We're talking about Templar conspiracies. How real is this stuff? I'd love to hear your thoughts. 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. Don't go anywhere. We're going to get into where did the Templars go when we return. Be right back. Don't go anywhere. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Hang tight, Axel. 5 minutes. Be right back. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and we are streaming on Rockfin, YouTube, DLive, and Twitter. We are broadcasting live on the Fringe FM. We're here tonight with my good friend Axel Steele, and we're talking about, that's right, you got it, the Templars. The Knights Templar, the Templar conspiracies. Why are we still talking about this in the 21st century, and what is going on? Again, we had some great insight there from the Night Stalker. Do you think they were the first breakaway civilization, or do you think it's more or less complicated than that? Love to hear your thoughts on this. Please don't crap on religions. We don't do that here. We ain't doing that. We're not talking about that. Love to hear your thoughts. 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. We'll put you on the show. It's as easy as that. Real quick too, we're if you enjoy the Fringe FM, we're doing a fundraiser this week, and to keep the station on the air, it is listener funded. And please, fringe.fm/ oh my goodness, I'm going to say this wrong. Let me double check myself before I break this. Fringe.fm/donations. Please, every dollar helps, and it does keep the Fringe on the air, so I appreciate that very much. Thank you for considering that. Thanks for enjoying the work that we do here. Not myself, yes, included, but also all the other amazing stuff that happens on Fringe FM. Axel Steele, welcome back to Troubled Minds. What's up, brother?
Everything's good.
Everything's good. Hey, all right. So we left off with this fantastic idea. I love it. Night Stalker always blowing my brain up with kind of looking at things and different angles and considering all the possibilities. I love that. That's what Troubled Minds is about. Now let's get to the point here where let's round out the story. We're talking about the First Crusade, the Second Crusade. We're talking about now the Knights Templar themselves have become this military force, not just in terms of let's say like military strength, but also wealth. And what does that do? In many terms, even today, it makes you a target, doesn't it? So let's get to that, and then transition over the next, let's say, segment here, where we think they actually went today. But let's get right back to it.
Yeah. Give me like 5 minutes to wrap up what ended up happening in the Holy Land, and then
Sure.
we'll get to the dissolution of the order.
Sure, go right ahead.
So this a name a lot of people might know. A guy by the name of Saladin comes on the scene, and as I sort of said earlier, at the time the Muslims in the Middle East were fractured between Shiite and Sunni, and the Crusader states knew that was important. They knew that if the Muslims unified, they'd be in real trouble. But in the late 12th century, it turns out there were tensions between the Grand Master of the Order of Templars, who was a very important figure, and like the King of Jerusalem. And this basically led to them not being able to keep their stuff together. So in very short order, for example, what happens is that the Grand Master of the Templars forms a deal with the Caliph of Cairo for an alliance. And then he immediately sort of gets betrayed by the King of Jerusalem, who ignores the deal, tries to conquer Cairo and fails. And then on the other end, the King of Jerusalem, he is attempting to forge an understanding, at least with the assassins of fame and their old man of the mountain. And he sort of establishes a deal with them through a envoy. And then some Templars literally like jump out of a bush when they're trying to get trying to get the envoy back to the old man of the mountains and kill the envoy. And so that alliance also doesn't go anywhere. And so Saladin, who is sort of Templar-like in his own way, because a big part of his public presentation was that he was fighting a jihad on behalf of all Muslims to get the Christians out of the Levant. He does basically succeed. He succeeds in reconquering Jerusalem. He conquers a bunch of other Christian-held territory. It doesn't help that the last real king of Jerusalem, this guy named Baldwin IV, had suffered from leprosy ever since he was a child and just was never really well enough to be an effective king. Technically, he's not the one alive when they reconquered Jerusalem. He had been dead by then, but there was this whole succession crisis, which isn't worth getting into. So the Templars really never recover from Jerusalem being retaken because their whole reason for being was, they were the Knights of the Temple Mount. They protected pilgrims that went to and from Jerusalem. There were still other Crusader states. They hadn't been wiped out entirely yet, but they kind of lost their reason for being around. It hurt their public perception. Now, Jerusalem is retaken by Saladin in 1187. The Crusader states basically limp on for another century. They aren't fully retaken by Muslim forces. Not Saladin, but the Mamluks end up retaking the entire Holy Land in the late 13th century. And the last Crusader state, which I think is Accra, falls in 1291. At this point, the Templars have lost all their holdings in the Holy Land. They are based out of Cyprus at this point, which was conquered and then given to them by King Richard the Lionheart. And at this point, what happens is the Templars basically travel. They still have a lot of money. They still have a lot of funds, and the Grand Master of the Templars and other important Templars basically travel around Western Europe trying to get another crusade going, because their whole reason for being is they're, the Knights of the Temple. They have holdings in the Holy Land. That's not true anymore. They're like a band that has broken up and is trying to pursue solo projects on something like that. Things aren't going well. But there really isn't any appetite for another crusade in Western Europe. at least in the Holy Land. Partly that was because they were conducting crusades, but it was against people in Europe, like the Cathars, which were sort of a Gnostic spin-off sect in southern France, or they were doing crusades in the Baltics against the pagans that were kind of in northeastern Europe, basically the last European pagans. And so there wasn't a lot of appetite for it. And the other problem is that King Philip IV of France, who was kind of one of these early monarchs that was consolidating his power, he owed the Templars a lot of money. And he wasn't super happy about it, and sort of thought at the time, and he was a very powerful king, and he had a lot of influence over the papacy. And so he basically decided it was time to get rid of these guys. And so, as you said, on Friday the 13th in 1309, he basically orders all the Templars in France to be arrested. At least all the ones he can get his hands on. And after that, there is a lengthy series of trials that does go on for years, where he basically accuses the Templars of sexual impropriety, being disrespected, like spitting on the cross, stamping on the cross, disrespecting the cross, denying Christ, and worshiping Baphomet, which was
Baphomet,
some sort of Baphomet. I'm just going to keep saying it the way I'm saying it.
Gotcha. You said Baphomet. You went all like Dragonlance on us for a moment. Baphomet. Anyway, you're
Baphomet.
Good. You're good.
And most of these confessions, he gets not everyone confesses. Some people do, but these are all extracted after like long prison terms under bad conditions, under torture. It's never really clear what Baphomet is. Sometimes it's described by people who confess as a cat's head, as a skull, as a head with multiple faces. Probably because these were tortured confessions and it was all sort of made up. King Philip IV had a habit of accusing people. I mean, he saw himself as being a very pious Christian, and he had a habit of finding political enemies, accusing them of impiousness, and then killing them. So this wasn't like the only time he did this. This was a running habit the man had. However, it probably isn't helped that the Knights Templar probably were worshiping a head. Not worshiping. They probably were venerating a head, because by all accounts, they had the relic that was the head of Saint Athenus, who was this 5th century martyr, female Greek martyr. It also is rumored, but never really proven, that they may have had the preserved head of the first Grandmaster, Hugh the Pens. So there may have been some basis in truth to that little bit of it. But it turns out that basically no one really believed the charges being levied against them. At least no one who looked into them. There was, the Catholic Church held a trial. People thought, oh, these were extracted under torture. This isn't very plausible. In fact, in 2001, in like the Vatican Library, someone found a record of sort of like some internal. It's called I think the Chinon document, but it was relevant contemporary records of what the Pope was trying to do with the Knights Templar, and it was clear the Pope was trying to find a way to not disband the order because it still was pretty popular. But the King of France had a lot of power. Had a lot of power over the papacy. So eventually they basically had to cave and disband the order. Also, it is true that it was pretty clear that King Philip IV wasn't going to let it go. I mean, when in France it seemed like the Knights Templar might succeed in their defense because they had found some relatively well-spoken not lawyers, but people that are willing to make the case for their innocence, that were like well-spoken and educated. King Philip IV did just basically put a stop to the trial and burned at the stake all the Templars he had his mitts on, which I think was like 56 of them or something. And that basically made the people that were trying to defend the Templars in France give up, because it was clear the king wasn't going to let it go, and he was more than willing to kill people to make it happen.
But before that, notably before that, so they, again, back to that Order 66 Star Wars, it was clearly based on that idea that there was a conspiracy to capture, in this case, the Templar Order is sort of akin to the Jedi, if you guys are familiar with the Star Wars universe. And Order 66 was that Friday the 13th, these secret messages that went out all over Europe that was basically like, hey, these guys are heretics. These guys are worshiping demons and all this other stuff, like accusations galore. And on this moment, on this particular day, arrest them all, because this is what's going on. But so I want to mention that to clarify those terms for people that don't know. But then also, like I said, they whoever they had left, they just burned them at the stake. But before that, there was a crap ton of torture. They were torturing the crap out of these people, trying to get them to confess, as was the thing of the day, right? So if you couldn't get them to confess by saying you did it, didn't you do it? They're like, nah. Then you're like, all right, let's cut off the tip of your finger and see if you confess now, right?
Yeah, a lot of them had been in prison were in prison for years before. Maybe not years and years, but we're like in prison for a year or 2 years before the trials even happened. So a lot of the Templars, when the trials came, the religious trials came around, the Inquisition, so to speak, came around on them, they'd been in prison for years. They were in very bad shape. A lot of them had died in prison. For the most part, the sort of Order 66 thing was just France. King Philip, the force power was a little bit limited. But he did basically grab all the ones he get his hands on in France. That was always sort of the heart of Templar country. Their first Grandmaster was French. France was the largest sort of unified country through this period, had the most money. And so it was definitely a big blow to them. King Philip IV convinces the Pope to disband the order in 1312. And then what happens kind of varies from country to country. In France, they're basically all killed or driven out. In northern Italy, which is pretty close to France, basically the same thing happens, kind of for local reasons. The Germans basically didn't care about it, and so didn't really persecute them. They were on pretty good terms with the English monarch. This is in England. This is in the period where Scotland temporarily breaks away, and it doesn't happen yet, but it happened shortly after the Templars dissolved. We'll get back to that because there's always been legends that they ended up in Scotland. But the English king was on pretty good terms with the Templar. Didn't believe any of the accusations, but then it turns out that like one of his best friends and possible lover got captured by the French because they were warring with the French over this entire time. And so he basically sells out the Templars to get his friend back. So he also ended up persecuting them. And as I said earlier, they were very popular in Spain and Portugal. So the Spanish government was pretty much unwilling to actually persecute anyone, although they agreed to disband the order. I'm going to leave Portugal aside for 1 second, just to say that what happened when they got disbanded is that some of them got convicted of heresies and so maybe got imprisoned or had a penance or executed. Most of them weren't, because like lots of people didn't believe the stories, and it's hard to have a trial there were a lot of them. But their order got dissolved and mostly combined with the Hospitallers. So Templars sort of forcefully, their order ended and then they would become members of the Hospitaller order, which also was a martial order. And so it wasn't like, it was more of like a lateral move. But in most countries, the assets of because the King Philip wanted all the Templar assets, and he probably did steal their treasury. But the Catholic Church was able to avoid giving King Philip any of the land, and their lands and money, for the most part, went to the Hospitallers, who these days are the Knights of Malta. If anyone has heard that, that's kind of like how they've survived in modern form, is as the Knights of Malta. So they're still around. In Portugal was a little different. The Templars were very popular in Portugal, and so what happened is that the Portuguese monarch just created a new militant knightly order called the Knights of Jesus Christ, and the Templars just turned into them in Portugal. So in Portugal, they really just kept going under a different name that technically was not run by the Catholic Church, but run by the Portuguese government, by the monarch. And so they never really went away there. So one of the answers was, did all the Knight Templars get wiped out? No, they didn't. They just kept doing what they were doing in Portugal, for example. But yeah, that was basically in most of Europe, they got folded into other religious orders and stopped being an independent entity.
Okay, so all of that is how this wraps up. But then, of course, right? So you can't catch them all because you can't catch all of anything. Literally, you can't catch all the cockroaches or whatever, right? Like, in those terms, I'm like wink, wink because they're coming at them, right? But so where did they go? We got about let's say 5 minutes left. So what is the theory on, again, why we're still talking about this today? Again, so if they captured the Templars, they broke up the Brotherhood, they put many of them to death, tortured some escaped. Why are we still talking about this today? Where did they actually go? And well, of course, that takes us to doesn't it take us to Rosalind Chapel and some other wink wink ideas here? Go right ahead, sir.
Well, let's wrap up with the possible Templar Freemason connection.
Sure.
So so like I said, in Portugal they just got renamed, and that knightly order continued to be extremely wealthy. They were part of a lot of Portugal's early colonization efforts. They were involved in a lot of that. They traveled to the New World, helped conquer Brazil and stuff like that. And that order became immensely wealthy doing that. And so, like I said, they never really disappeared. In 1789, they stopped being a religion. They got secularized. They stopped being a religious order and became a secular one. But that's well after there were established Freemason chapters in Portugal in the 18th century. So that's one possible connection. There's an overlap between the Templars and Freemasons in Portugal. When you look at Scotland, where Freemasonry started, there has always been the legend that so there's this guy named Robert the Bruce. Shortly after the Templars were dissolved, he sort of completed a guerrilla war against England and was able to. Scotland became a separate country again, at least for a while. And there has always been legends that the Templars in Scotland. They did officially get dissolved, but they also didn't like the English crown. They also didn't really like the Catholic Church that much. And so there's always been legends that the Templars in Scotland teamed up and helped Robert the Bruce gain Scottish independence. That is where the earliest Freemason chapters are from. And people are like, well, it's too long. But Templars got dissolved in 1312, and you don't really get Freemasonry till the 18th century. But in Scotland, that's not really true. The earliest Masonic chapters date back to the 1500s, and so I'm going to say it's not that implausible that maybe the Templars are still around as a secret society for 150, 60 years before they became the Freemasons. I don't think that's a crazy idea. The real reason why, though, that there's a Freemason Templar connection is this French Freemason I'd have to look it up and we don't have enough time, but he was sort of a very famous promoter of the Freemasonic ideals in France in the late 18th century. He claimed originally that Freemasonry was descended from the Hospitallers, but that ran into the problem that those guys were still around, and so there was always a danger they were going to be like, you don't have anything to do with us, assuming they really didn't have anything to do with them. So after about a year of saying that, he switched over to saying they were based on the Knights Templars, which conveniently didn't really have anyone in France that was going to yell at him about them Freemasonry not really being connected to him.
Yeah, and just to wrap up some of that stuff too. Many of you guys are familiar with that. I saw Robert in the chat say freedom. Yeah, Robert the Bruce. Yes, that Robert the Bruce from Braveheart. That actually Edward I of England, which was Longshanks, right? The English king at the time. That whole thing, it based on a historical precedent. The Battle of Stirling, all that stuff, right? That's all based on real stuff. Was Mel Gibson there? I'm going to say probably not. I'm going to say probably not. But right, exactly. That's exactly. It was sort of how this ties into that. And so I don't know, man, in the end terms here, as you guys know, right, all the different stuff I was reading tonight regarding the Templar conspiracies, not just the conspiracies themselves, but the history, it's kind of all over the place, right? The sources, there's conflicting sources or different stories. As always, right, you would expect a lot of that from history. So real quick, Axel, before we dip out of here for getting off the radio, What are you read some books to prepare for this? Can you tell us what those are so that people can actually maybe follow up on you if they want to look into more of this?
Sure. This will require me to go to my iBooks and look at the title, though.
That's okay. I got you. I got you. Let me know how much time you need.
None really. It was internet stuff. It was but the big, basically, I'll be honest, the big thing was, the book called The Templars, The Rise and Spectacular Fall of God's Holy Warriors by Dan Jones, a relatively well-respected historical writer. It's a big book. It's like, well, on iBooks, it's like 900 pages. Who knows what it is in real life? Sort of my own knowledge, a bunch of stuff about that doesn't really deal with the Freemasonry connection, but it's basically just a flat history of the situation. That was sort of, I guess, that was the book I bought and read this week in order to prepare.
Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. That's what I wanted out of that. So okay. So also, by the way, like I said, Axel Steele, good friend of mine. Thank you so much for peeling out your time for us tonight to read the book and prepare and be the guy that kind of drove the narrative here. I appreciate it very much. Where can people find you? I got your Axel Steele Twitter linked in the description down below. Give him a follow on Twitter if you guys use Twitter. And you got something else? I mean, you're the dungeon master. You're the history guru.
It.
No, that's it. All right.
You can come if anyone if you come and hang out in the after chat on Discord sometime. I'm there a lot.
Yes,
people want to see me there.
I can confirm that. So, okay, so a couple things real quick. So as we finish up, appreciate that, Axel. Thank you so much for being you. Hang tight. We're not going anywhere. We got James on the line as well. We're going to get to James. Thanks for being patient, bro. Look, this is the thing, right? As we finish, don't forget, Fringe is in need of help. If you guys want to help out and you appreciate the Fringe, fringe.fm/donations. Go give a few bucks if you can and keep the station on the air. Appreciate that. Like I said, it's free, but at some point somebody's got to pick up the bill. So please do that if you can, or if not, just spread the word to people that would be able to help. I appreciate that. But look, we're not done yet. This is the thing. All right. So if you're listening to us on this is how this goes, right? This is how this goes. I'm going to smash the button. We're going to play this. We're going to do the thing. Special thanks to Axel Steele. Special thanks to James for being super patient while we got through this final segment here. But you can't say enough about Axel. Good friend of mine. Met in the most unlikely of circumstances. Different and yet the same. You're the best, brother. I thank you so much for spending your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There you go. We'll have Axel back at some point as well. He's always welcome back on the show. Look, if you're listening to us on the Fringe FM, stay tuned for Joe Roop and Lighting the Void. If you're listening to us on any other platform, including the podcast feed, stay tuned for a third hour of Troubled Minds. And as it ends, it goes exactly like this. Be sure, be strong, be true. And of course, regarding all this stuff, like history-wise and whatnot, it's your own interpretation. You manage your reality, I'll manage mine. And thank you for listening. From our troubled minds to yours, have a great night. We'll be back tomorrow talking about the UFO congressional hearings. We'll catch you then. Have a great one, guys. Okay, all right. Let's kill this music. We're off the radio. Kick it off to Joe Roop and let them handle it over there. They'll handle their reality. We'll handle our reality. Axel, anything to add before we take a quick break and get to James? Thank you. Special thanks to James for dipping in and waiting for so long. There's a lot to cover on this, and I think when you're talking like in historical context, right? It's thick, it's deep. It's one of those things where you kind of got to get to the end.
Sorry, Michael, there kind of wasn't because my headphone cut out.
Oh, you're fine. We're good. We're totally good, man. We're totally good. Let me kill that echo for you. Sorry about that. But yeah, no. So anything you got to add real quick? We're going to take a quick 2-minute break. We're going to get to James. He's got a phone call for us as well. And there we go. How you feeling? Okay, his headphone cut out. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break. James, hang tight. We're going to get to you in just a sec. Yeah, thick. What's that? Derek in the Nice Talk. Thick with 2 C's. 2 C's. Hey, sometimes, right? Sometimes. All right, appreciate it, James. All right, here's what we're gonna do then. We're Axel's headphones look. The conspiracy is the gremlins got into his headphones and shut him down. They don't want him spilling secrets. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take a 2-minute break. More Troubled Minds coming up. Don't go anywhere. And we got James on the horn, and of course your calls as well. 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. We're here with Axel Steele. We're talking about the Templar conspiracies. Why are we still talking about this in the 21st century? And why do you think that it maybe tracks back or traces back to wherever the hell it started? So let's do it. Let's smash on the button, and we're gonna take a quick 2-minute break. We'll be back with James and Axel, and let's do it. There we go. Let's skip that, and let's do that. Shut up, Michael Strange. Be right back. 2-minute break. More Troubled Minds on the way. Don't go anywhere. We got a third hour coming up. Axel's here, James is here, and you're here. 702-957-1037. Be right back. I don't know if you can hear me, Axel, but go ahead and get your headphones fixed. We got a couple minutes here. And we're off the radio, so go ahead and test.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, sweet. Be right back. 2 minutes, grabbing some beer, taking a leak. Let's roll it. 2 minutes, more Troubled Minds on the way. All right, how are we feeling? How are we looking? Everybody good? Let's do it. Let's get the fuck back to this. It's time, Axel. You ready to drop some F-bombs?
I'm not sure I'm up to F-bombs yet.
No, we're not there yet. All right. If we're not there yet, that's fine. I'm ready to drop some F-bombs. All right, looking to hear your thoughts on this, guys. We're still talking about the Templars tonight. 702-957-1037. And we sort of morphed into so where did the Templars go, right? So, some, of course, were executed, some escaped, some were tortured, some of the rest of this, all the other things, right? So the order was broken up, but I think the most fascinating part to me, and why I keep bringing this up, is why are we still talking about this today? Did they escape? Did they become actually the Freemasons? Did they become, the Masons? Again, different things, the same things. I don't know. I don't know shit about this, to be perfectly honest. So thank God Axel's here to set me straight. But okay, so we sort of merged into that idea that not only did the order dissolve, they became something else, right? And do you think they still exist in modern times? Let's get your take on that, and then we'll get to James.
Like I said, the Knights of Jesus Christ in Portugal, they still kind of exist as if you do nice things in Portugal, they'll make you a member. They're like an honorary society still. So to that extent, sort of like knighthoods in England. So to that extent, they still exist. Is there maybe they lived on through the Freemasons. I don't think there's while I do believe in secret societies, I don't think the Templars are still around as a secret society on their own. I do think the idea that there's no way the Freemasons could have been connected to them, I do think is a little overstated. I think it's possible that there's a connection there. But yeah, I don't think there's people that still call themselves Templars that are connected with the ones from the 13th century hidden away somewhere myself.
Gotcha. It's like that old, hey, I got my 23andMe or my Ancestry.com back, and look, it says I'm a Templar. Yeah. Like that. That's the shit that's going on. I mean, I'm clearly joking, but you see, you ever done one of those, Axel, or had a family member do one of those genetic things that traces back?
If any of my family members have done it, they haven't told me about it.
Well, lucky
and
you.
I haven't.
Lucky you, because half of my family is like, oh look, we're 33% Neanderthal. I'm like, fuck, why? Fuck, why? I'm just kidding, of course, but I'm kidding on the Neanderthal part. It was more like 6.5%. But I'm like, why? Why would you literally submit your DNA Anyway, I digress entirely. Okay, all right. So we got this maybe loose connection. We got Rosslyn Chapel we can get to in the rest of this too, including the Da Vinci Code stuff. Like that's fascinating as fuck to me, how it sort of ties back into this. Is it fiction? Is it not? And by the way, you may not be aware of this. I was doing some digging myself. Hey, I have my ways, Axel, and I found there may be a particular connection in that sense of that. You remember the guy's name in the Da Vinci Code? The guy that in the beginning with he was working in the Louvre, and he did the whole fucking thing that started him on the wild goose chase. The what's his name? What's his fucking name?
I do not remember that character's name.
Jacques. I got it. Hold on, I got it right here. Jacques. Hold on. Saunier, that was his name. Pardon my French, like literally pardon my French this time. When I say fuck, pardon my French, but also my actual French. Okay, so we're going to get to that in just a sec. But before we do any of that, James has been waiting for so long. James actually has some experience with a Masonic temple in his town and some more things. James, welcome to Troubled Minds, my friend. Thank you for being patient with us. What's going on, brother? How are you tonight?
No problem. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Go right ahead.
Okay, good. The last couple of times we tried this at first, it didn't work. So
yeah, hey, we had a good run of like 50 times in a row. It was all fine, and then the last two have been all fucked up, man. I blame Axel. It's got to be Axel's fault, right?
Damn it, Axel. No.
Damn it, Axel. Totally. So what's your take on this? So not just the Templars, but also the Freemasons and the rest. Go right ahead.
Yeah, great show. I like what Derek said. I agree that the history is so interesting in a lot of ways. And then I kind of just wanted to keep on going with some of what Derek said with some experiences I've had. So in the town where I live, where I've spent a good part of my life, those of you who know me know which one it is. I'm just not going to say it on the air just in case. But it's in Michigan, and it's a smaller town. But I've been to the local Masonic temple many times over the years because they rent it out for public events here and there. And so my family's had some things there over the years. And it always feels crowded to me. Here we're getting into some of the more metaphysical, paranormal possibly stuff. But it always felt crowded to me. And so I just always found that to be just strange. But then I started looking into this stuff a little more. And I was saying in the chat, when I first found this show, we talked about this in some of the after show chats at night a lot of times, on and off, for quite a while, that the experiences I had in that temple where I felt that there was some kind of a spirit nearby. I had other family members that felt that same thing in other parts of the building and even saw a figure at one point on the second floor when they were on the first floor looking up the stairs. But I've looked into this more, and a lot of the places that are said to be Masonic temples, if you look around online, you can find reports from people who say they've had weird paranormal experiences at these sites, and I can agree. I have as well. It just always felt a little bit crowded, and like there were people watching, even if there wasn't really anyone else, except for the people that were near me that were there. So even when I did a tour of the building, of the public parts of the building, didn't go through all the building, it felt like even though I was only with one other person, it still had that feeling of it being crowded. So I don't know what there is to that, but there's something. It's some kind of weird energy. Beyond that, I don't know for sure what it is. But that brings me to what Derek mentioned with the ley lines, that whole idea, and how also I don't know if you mentioned it or not, but how they seem to be, in a lot of cases, they can be connected to water and waterways, whether they're underground or not, or they're just nearby. How so many of these places, they're built on or near water and waterways, and moving water, of course, makes its own energy.
Yeah, it has its own magnetic field, as they say. So in terms of like that ley line idea, some of those sacred spots are like a crossing of rivers, but not obviously rivers in sense of rivers. Shout out to Rivers, a friend of ours, who actually, by the way, is in the chat and said Axel did a very nice job tonight. There you go, Axel. A compliment to you from somebody who's in the know on about a lot of these things. But so in rivers, in sense of not just like visible rivers, but there's also underground rivers that sort of cross in these sacred spots where they build. We were talking about this, like this is probably months ago, James, right? 3 months ago, maybe 4 months ago, we were talking about this and actually sharing maps about these Masonic temples and how these churches are built on not just like gigantic waterways, but also like the sort of these underground crisscrossing of maybe waters or in terms of magnetic fields, right? So, I mean, there's a lot here. It turns into like, what the hell's really going on, right? Like, is there actual like sacred magic to these spots, or is this just, well, you know, just drinking water, right? Like, again, and that's why we talk about this stuff in those terms. Go ahead with that, and then we'll get to Axel. What else you got?
Yeah. Well, and just the other thing too is I did find out there is a underground waterway that goes through my town. And it's not too far from this place, this temple. But also, I do feel like, because I was talking with a couple of the people there one night after an event, and they mentioned that they did have basically ghost stories attached to that building. And they said that way back when, I think it was either World War I or World War II, it was beginning of the last century, or middle of last century, the latest. There was this man that joined that local temple, and then of course went off to war. And then after they found out he had passed, the people in the area found out he had passed, his spirit was seen in that temple again later on by people. And so there's this idea that, you know, what is the cause of that? Is that just because they really enjoy being in the place? Is that, again, we get to some of these places and these groups, you know, they have different let's say ceremonies and maybe rituals. Is there something that they did in this location, or that they do in these locations that, you know, not even necessarily the entire group. I'm not even saying the entire order. I'm just saying certain groups, you know, even small groups, that somehow brought that spirit back there after the fact, and other spirits maybe even, because again, the place felt crowded. It always feels crowded to me when I go there.
That's fascinating. I've never actually been in one. Never been in a Masonic temple, even an Elks Lodge. I went to the VFW once. Does that count? I used to go with my grandparents all the time. But okay, look, see how I digress. But okay, Axel, you have anything for James there regarding that stuff? And also, we'll get into this after this, because there's more, of course, as there's always more here. But regarding like sort of the esoteric nature of let's tap the dungeon master in you, do you think that maybe it's possible that the Templars had some access to maybe sort of an unspoken of power, right? Whether it was a ritual or whatever. Let's like I said, let's start drinking some maybe juice. What do you think, my man?
Well, I'm not going to say anything about actual living Masons that are alive right now and what they might be getting up to.
Okay, but that's a fantastic take. Thank you for being very careful and sidestepping that, because that's very deft, very deft.
But I would say historically, you know, thinking about it, I guess we really do. I mean, the Templars had, if you want to take the Mason thing literally, the Templars had a lot of Masons. They had a lot of, you know, they actually did have like a lot of scholars and intellectuals that worked for them, bookkeepers, stuff like that. I do think we have to separate those guys from the actual Knights. I don't think the Knights themselves in the Holy Land were probably engaged in weird magic rituals. Maybe we can talk a little bit about Baphomet and what the specifics of how that has been interpreted later on, if we want to. But they all did seem to be kind of like the Knights at least seemed like reasonably pious, head on their shoulders. I mean, they frankly didn't have a lot of time for ceremonial magic. They were spending most of their time like garrisoning castles and fighting people.
Whooping ass.
But when you,
hey man, there's only so much time to whoop ass and sleep, right?
But when you get away from them back into the West, I guess I wouldn't be too shocked if there were obviously I'm not going to go to Tibet for the Inquisition and its witch hunts and stuff like that.
no, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. Come on now. Come on, man. Two things can be true at the same time, right? It doesn't have to be Baphomet and demon worship. By the way. If you believe in black magic, there's also white magic. Sorry.
But I was going to say, I don't think the idea that there were still pagan groups operating, or there were people at least purporting to be practicing magic, or there were heretics. I don't think it was all made up, right? Like there were heretics, there were people, there were magicians, there were people still engaging in pagan practices, and so it wouldn't shock me if the Freemasons were kind of involved. Not Freemasons, sorry, the Templars were kind of involved, that kind of stuff. One thing is they were more cosmopolitan than a lot of Europeans because half their order was in the Middle East. And so there's always been some debate about maybe they weren't engaging in pagan beliefs and stuff, but there's been some suspicion that maybe they were taking on aspects of Judaic or Islamic theology or practices that would still read as being heretical to the Catholic Church, because they did. I mean, their interactions with Muslims and Jews in the Middle East weren't like unrelentingly hostile. I mean, they had alliances. There were Jews and Muslims who lived in the city-states they were in, and so that might have been happening. Now, for whatever Freemasons are up to these days, I think it probably has more to do with sort of like the revival of or ceremonial magic that happened in like the 18th, 19th century. Probably than anything that's really deeply connected to the Templars.
Okay, fair enough. Good stuff there. James, anything on that? Well, we got you on here. And of course, you're welcome to stay,
Yeah, no, I'll just say a couple things here, and then I think I'll head out. But yeah, and that's the thing too. Obviously, I don't. I'm not even saying anything for sure, or even like I said about the entire organization. It's just, I think, like when we talk about the government, it's not just one thing. It's a lot of different people and a lot of different groups, and within that blanket label, I guess you could say. So, and this was even basically what I said was something I was told by someone that was there. So, technically, I'm not really saying anything for sure. Just want to make sure I put that out there. I don't know. Except, like I said, it did feel crowded. And that was throughout the building, even in the some of the like narrow passageways, hallways, but then also in the larger, more open rooms, it still had that feeling to it. So, yeah, I don't know whether it is the fact that it was built on this location that maybe was a power spot or not. I don't know, but I'll never forget all the times I've been there, and who knows, maybe I'll go back there again at some point for another public event, and we'll see what happens. So.
Oh yes, and so for those of you that don't know, James here is legally blind, and so when he says it felt crowded, you sort of mean in like a stuffy, sort of a sensing other presences way, right? Not like a lot of people there, right? Just to clarify.
Kind of both. It kind of felt, yeah, it was kind of both. Yeah, like there were people, but they were just moving out of the way, almost as we were passing through. So it was odd, but yeah, no, but great show, and you're doing great, Axel, and great call again from Derek. He kind of opened the door for me to kind of make this call in about this, because again, like I said, we've been talking about this on and off now for over a year.
Yeah, yeah. The different things like the links, the rivers and the ley lines and the like these temples, so where they put them in these power spots and all the rest of that. James, you're the best. I appreciate you dipping in here. Everybody, look, James, good friend of mine, good friend of Axel's. James is the glue that makes the show go. He's got a podcast called Salcedo Paranormal. Check it out. Links in the description down below. He does podcasts on you guessed it, paranormal stuff 5 nights a week. You can find him doing them live on Discord, and you can also just download his stuff and listen to it on demand completely free. Links in the description. His link tree's there. You can find everything, including the Discord, the podcast. He's an author. He's written books on paranormal stuff, and of course he's got some other sci-fi stuff coming up that he's writing as well. The sci-fi / paranormal / how would you define it, James?
Yeah, I think it'd just be a mixture of paranormal sci-fi, I guess would be a good way to put it.
Paranormal sci-fi. There it is. Check it out. Give James some love. Appreciate you, my man. You're the best. Always a pleasure. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Axel. So, okay. So let's get into the weird shit. Okay, look, we're looking to hear your thoughts. We're here with Axel Steele. We're talking about the Templar conspiracies. How real is this stuff? Like I said, leave that shit about like dumping on one religion or the other. Just leave that shit at home. We aren't talking about that tonight. We don't do that here. Look, like we respect all opinion of thoughts. Like literally, it's what this has always been about. Like just let's hear people and what they think in their mind and in their heart. And this is all like just getting people together and talking about stuff. So it's all good. Look, regarding so what about the more weird things? Oh, real quick, 702-957-1037. You want to talk to Axel, my friend here, myself, or the both of us combined, or whatever else you got on your mind, click the Discord link at troubleminds.org. All right, so Axel, I don't know. Is there anything you left out that you want to add into this before we get into the super weird shit, including like Rosalind Chapel, including like what about the Da Vinci Code, and is that bullshit? Is it not? What about the bloodline of Christ? Does it go back through this whole Merovingian bloodline and back to the Templars and otherwise? We can take this so many different fucking ways, but anything you want to dip in before we get into super crazy stuff?
I mean, do you want to talk about Abraxas?
Sure. Sure. Well, it's up to you. Go ahead. Well, let's do it.
One of the in sort of the more modern. This wasn't brought up at the time, but one of the more modern reasons to think the Templars might have been involved in occult stuff is that some of the seals of their Grandmaster, I'm thinking of one particularly from the early 13th century, have on it this figure of Abraxas. Who's kind of this in the seal, he's sort of this chimera in the sense that he has like a human torso but then like snakes for legs. But Abraxas is a Gnostic figure. He sort of shows up in 2nd century Gnostic cults in sort of like the Greek speaking areas of the world. And he's one of well, I don't know if we have time to really get into Gnosticism. He's basically the Gnostic equivalent of an angel, where he's from the higher realm and comes to our realm in order to give people knowledge and to help people. But and he was a popular figure for a long time. The Catholic Church eventually. So, like in the early, like Uranus and people like that, like in the earlier polemical works against Gnostics, he comes up. He's sort of considered a demon by the Catholic Church, but he does show up on one of the Templar seals, and that's one of the reasons why people, think maybe the Templars were engaged in Gnosticism, or that actually comes up in like early Hermetic works that claim the Templar. They also want to claim the Templars as being like part of in their half understood version of Gnosticism they were doing. And so that's one of the other symbols that comes up. I kind of think probably they just thought it was a cool image or something, basically. But because Abraxas shows up in other seals, other places, other people use. So my guess it probably was just they thought it was like a cool image or was one they had been exposed to. But that's one of the other reasons why people accuse them of occultism is the use of Abraxas in some of their seals.
But wait, what if Abraxas is real, Axel?
I mean, Gnosticism. Well, as I always say, Gnosticism is literal but not real. So I don't know.
All right, I'm trying to twist Axel's arm and make him ponder the the complexities of the universe. No, it's okay. It's okay. All right. Okay. So I mean, look, and I think there's a weird. So do you think that, like, in terms of why this persists today, like I said, this is the thing that fascinates me the most, because it is, there are other fascinating parts of history that are, let's say compelling, right? Literally compelling enough to kind of like sort of dip into the zeitgeist, but not necessarily like in terms of the Holy Grail and the Lost Ark and all that crazy treasure and the Spear of Destiny and all the shit we were talking about, including Oak Island. We can get to that in a sec too. But what the fuck? Like, do you think that this, in terms of all of that, is just a bunch of bullshit? Just romanticism and let's say it outright. Romanticism, racism, religious bigotry just run amok. Do you think that actually plays into this? And we don't do this a lot on the show, but like when you're talking about the Levant, you're talking about Israel, and you're talking about like these holy sites of the world. It's complicated. It's always complicated, right? And so they've been fighting over these holy places for thousands of years, for fuck's sakes. What I don't know. Like, how would you quantify it? Like, how do we still give a fuck? I think that's the thing that drives me the most nuts about this. It's like, hey, look, we ain't got the Holy Grail, we ain't got the Ark of the Covenant, we ain't got the Spear of Destiny, but it's kind of on the mind of people, and well, they say they found him at the rebuilt Temple of Solomon or whatever. I mean, what the fuck, man? Why are we still talking about this?
I mean, partly the Assassin's Creed games, I don't think help.
Okay, see, there you go. Now now we're talking. Now we're fucking talking. Go ahead.
They are the principal antagonists in that series of games, which I stopped playing about 10 years ago. So I'm not quite caught up on what's going on in those anymore. But I do think in the modern era they are a figure that I think some religious / racist people in the West, I think they're an image that they can attach to, because the Templars are convenient because they're not associated with any. They were like this pan like national group, right? They're not like a particular ethnicity. They're not a particular nationality. They're so I think the people can like identify with them without I think that like they're a nice free floating signifier for people to identify with. That doesn't mean you have to identify with like a particular political order or institution. It's kind of like, have you ever heard of like the Teutonic Knights in Germany?
Yes, 100%. Yep.
So they also come out of this era, but they were more of like a specific national project that the Germanic people had, mostly in order to conduct their crusades against like the Baltics and stuff like that. But they're tied to a particular group of people, where the Templars are kind of they float free of that. They don't belong to one particular nation, and so I think in that sense they're a better target for multiple people to put their attention on. I mean, certainly the Crusades that involved knights from all over Western Europe. I mean, like even like the Norwegians and the Swedes got into them and sent armies down to fight in the Levant. So yeah, I think that's part of it. I think partly they're just sort of an interesting story. And I also do think it helps that they kind of had the JFK thing going for them, where even though maybe they continue to exist in some form, they largely got destroyed by a pretty obviously sort of corrupt process involving the King of France pressuring and colluding with the Pope to railroad a bunch of basically innocent people. But then you're also like, but maybe they did have a secret. Maybe there's like stories about how they got the head of Baphomet from like, they stole it from Constantinople, although I never really could track down why Constantinople had the head of a demon. So I'm not really sure what was going on there.
Hey, sometimes you just got to whack that motherfucker's head off and tuck it in your lunch pail. You know what I'm saying?
So but you, if you want, you can believe they were talking to they worshipped a demon head that was like, giving them magical secrets or whatever. I suppose. I don't know what demon heads really do, but why not? That sounds like the kind of thing they could do.
Yeah, hey, why not? You're doing ritual magic. The head of a demon ought to do some spectacular tricks, right? All right, we're looking to hear from you guys. We're here with Axel Steele, good friend of mine. We're talking about the Templar conspiracies. Where did they go? Why are we still talking about this stuff? Do you think there's any truth to any of this? Meaning that, as they always say, right? Interesting. We go back to Braveheart, right? Robert the Bruce. We go to Edward the First. We go to Longshanks. We go to that moment where this sort of like bled into in that sort of connection, but also in the beginning of Braveheart, if you guys remember this, they said that the victor is the arbiter of truth in history, right? I paraphrase that, but right, they basically, the winner writes history, and so they basically say we were the good guys, they were the bad guys, we won and they died, and this is the take. But clearly and obviously, when we look in terms of modern politics and just people in general, like with an axe to grind, it's not always so cut and dry. Things are complicated. So, what do you think regarding the Templar conspiracies and all the rest of this? I can't thank you enough, Axel, for being here, the best brother. We got Jennifer. Let's go to Jennifer on the line. 702-957-1037. Let's do it. Jennifer in Missouri. Welcome to Troubled Minds. You're on with Mike and Axel. Go right ahead. What's on your mind tonight? Uh-oh. We got dead air. Can you hear me, Jennifer? Test 1 2.
Oh no.
Problems. We got Kelly behind her too. Jennifer, test. I can't hear you. If you can hear me, I cannot hear you. Test. Test.
Is she still muted?
Nope.
She's still muted.
No. That's Kelly. She was on the phone. She was on the phone line. Yeah, she was on the phone line. So it looks like she hung up. So she's probably going to call right back or dip into Discord because she can do both. She's got those magic powers, right? You can do both when you got both. All right, she's calling back. I'll put her right back on. Look and hear your thoughts. We got Kelly. I see you there, bro. I'm not going to make you wait too long. Templar conspiracies. How real is this stuff? Is this really worth talking about? Go ahead, Axel.
Oh, I just want to say I actually have never seen Braveheart, so.
I've never seen it. Watch it. It's worth watching. Mel Gibson's kind of a dick, but the movie's good. I liked it. When I make the joke, if you're probably haven't been around that long, because Martin in Sweden, what's up? Shout out to Martin in Sweden. He always used to pop in and say, "Hey, I'm working or whatever." It's like, I just want to say hi in the chat. He's been listening to us for a very long time. I used to joke, "Hey, my island," with Martin in Sweden. Clearly, obviously, knowing Sweden's not really an island, but it's a joke from Braveheart. But anyway, there you go. Braveheart's good, man. I recommend it. And it's a swashbuckling freedom fight. Robert the Bruce and Longshanks. It's good shit. Jennifer, Missouri. Troubled Minds, go right ahead.
Hey, is it working?
Shit, it's working. How about that?
Yeah.
Yay. Welcome, Jennifer. Go right ahead. What are your thoughts?
Right.
What about this Templar
maybe
stuff?
Maybe it'll work for a minute. Well, okay, so we should look at... this is a great show. Really enjoying it.
Thank you.
And I think it's very interesting, and there's a lot more to it than we would imagine, I would think. And I think I like to look at it really big picture of what could happen, and maybe this is too imaginative for Axel, I don't know. But the way it seems to me is, when you look at that whole region of the Mediterranean at that time, and the whole Middle East, and basically the world at that time, that you had, it's a very different world, and you had all these people from China, from India, from the Middle East, from the West, all kind of commingling in the same area. And they were bringing, all of these different perspectives on the mysteries and the mysticism of the world. I feel like in the case of the Knights Templars, they were warrior monks, and monks, they were the soldiers assigned from the church of the time, ideally, is what they were hoping for. And these were truly, they did have strong, these weren't just mercenaries per se, which had been the idea in the past of what a knight was. These knights were kind of just thugs. And I do feel like the Knights Templar brought about the whole idea of the modern perception of the knight. For example, like in the King Arthur knight persona. But I think that there were much more than that. And I feel like that they did. I mean, of course, if they were at the behest of a religion, actually at the behest of a Byzantine emperor, to the Pope, to create such an order, that they did have a great deal of mystic and belief in mysticism, which is what all religion is trying to explain the deeper side of things, the way we try to talk about physics and metaphysics. They were describing this through different religious beliefs and sects around the world. And when you have this trade post happening, where you have the Far East meeting the West and bringing these beliefs, and how it collided, when they were created, when the Knights Templar were created, they were bringing their Western beliefs. But when they mingled with the Far Eastern mystic beliefs, there were warriors there too. You also have the fact that with Judaism, you had the Sicarii, which were the assassins of the Sicarii, the warriors of that sect, the cloak and dagger, which were they're the original assassin, essentially. But then you have the Hashashin, how the heck you would say it, the assassins of Persia, which are it's a real sect. I know the game and everything everybody came up with, that's a real group of a warrior class, Bushido, of the far, far east. These weren't just warriors. They were a type of spiritual advisory as well, because their beliefs weren't just held in their fight. They wasn't just held in their methodology of controlling world events, but it was also in their spirituality and their beliefs behind that. The Knights Templar were pretty much based, it was a culmination meant to defy those other warrior sects, was the idealism. But what ended up happening, I think, is they melded with them. And they brought with them all these different beliefs from the farthest reaches of the world and the Oriental, and all the way to the deep, into the Western European belief systems of spirituality, and melded it together. What you wind up with is something that you'll never find today. That's why are they still around? Do they still exist? You have the Order Temple Orientis claiming them. You have the Knights of Malta claiming them, but they're probably nowhere there. You have Aleister Crowley himself claiming the Knights Templar. And there's nothing they base their whole belief system, and that's all the stuff with the Illuminati and everything claiming or coming out of the Knights Templar. You're never going to find this group because they are cloak and dagger. The assassins of the Far East and the Bushido clans, is the farthest east. And then in the West, with this Sicarii, the Jewish assassins, melding together to create this sect, and they all melded together to be one hidden hand. And they were supposed to hold all of the knowledge of the world. And what happened was that you can't help that. These warriors went out, and with all of this, they were meant to defend something, to protect all people, and to hold up Bushido order. This whole thing was all about honor. And all these different groups were defending the same ideals, to protect knowledge and power and information, not just money, which had been around way before that. The bank notes, the trade, and everything had been around since so ancient. The idea of trade and money and interest had already been established on these roads. The Silk Road, the King's Highway, the Via Maris, all of these roads, all meeting and intersecting way before this order was ever created. And when that Byzantine, I can't remember his name, if I'd written it down, but it doesn't matter. Whenever he appealed to the Pope Urban or whoever it was at the time, when he appealed to him to create something to help, to guide these different tradesmen and travelers to come across, he didn't just create an order. He created something. They share the same symbolism of the assassins of the Hashim, of the Persians. They share the same Bushido code of the ninjas and the samurai out of the Far East of Japan. They were supposed to be like the perfect warrior class. What they did find when they melded, as you would, as any soldier who travels anywhere in the world, they become exposed to all kinds of knowledge and information. That knowledge and information, I believe, was so profound that they went ahead, and I think that some of them, maybe not all of them, did absorb it and continue to carry those mysteries on and take them on. The Baphomet is, I mean, I don't know why we're tiptoeing around it, but it is Old French for Muhammad. And with the Islamic religion belief, there is a seed of incredible amounts of wisdom akin to like the Jewish Kabbalah. We don't have to shy away from it. There is something in it. And in the OTO, for example, which to do, if you look at, and the OTO is worn by Aleister Crowley, it's worn by Ozzy Osbourne, everyone across the entire spectrum of rock and roll and anything else claim the Knights Templar. But you also have this other aspect of it where they believe that they're rising above all the base knowledge that we know, and that they know something a little bit more. And there is idea that the Knights Templar did carry on. Who they became and what they are today, I don't believe anyone will ever know, because they do know this ancient craft of the most ancient assassins and the most ancient Bushido laws, and I think it will never actually crack the truth of what they are or who they were or what they were doing, because I think that they eventually rose above their initial purpose. The same with the Black Pope of the Jesuits. These are religious sects and warriors, and they know things that, and they're defending something that the general public doesn't know about. And there is always going to be corruption here and there, but that cloak and dagger, that has always been the protecting ancient wisdom and knowledge. And I just think that's a very interesting perspective. I don't think that they were just something. The reason we're still talking about it today is because it's still implicated today in everything that we do. It's believed the Knights Templars brought about the Renaissance, that they are the hidden cloak and dagger hand that brought about the Enlightenment, that brought us to the modern Western world, and have brought us to where we are today. And without any of that, with all that wisdom, and if any of that had been burnt just that day on the 13th at the stake, we would have nothing today. And that's not true, because we have evolved into quite something. And maybe for good, maybe for evil, but I think that's a secret war probably going on amongst their own ranks, because people who have knowledge have power, and they're going to always be doing that. But I think it's a very interesting topic. I do feel that Axel did a good job bringing it forward. It was a very good show.
Thank you. Real quick, too, to address all that stuff you said is amazing. Why I'm tiptoeing around it is a couple of reasons. Number one, specifically, I am not an expert in like pre-Renaissance European history, and so I don't want to sort of invite the wrong idea. You know what I'm saying? That's all. So I want to be very careful there, just because I know that. Just saying. So me personally, it's a personal thing for me, because if I know something very well, I'll tell you I understand it very well. If I don't, I'll also tell you I don't. So that's the thing. So I just don't want to. I know there's a lot of ugliness kind of included in this conversation, and that's why. So just so you know, the number one. Number two, the other thing is that we got Axel here, and we didn't want to have a misunderstanding between us, right? Like in that his knowledge base versus mine are back and forth to the other thing. We just didn't want to have like this weirdness of ambiguity. So we kind of just agreed before we started to just like let's not, right? That's all. So, and I know everything's nuanced and things are complicated in the world, but you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying.
Nobody has to be afraid of language or anything like that.
Sure.
And there's not even anything. What's okay for one person may offend another person, and there may be many people who would be offended that we wouldn't accept the fact that Baphomet is Old French for Muhammad.
Right.
So there's no reason to be shying away from what words mean. And that is where the word comes from. It came out in the Inquisition for the Knights Templar. Baphomet was the ancient word for the monks. It's okay, is what I'm saying.
No,
and
I know.
I don't think that we should be afraid of it. There's slander on all sides.
Yeah.
But the truth is that all these religions were speaking wisdom.
Exactly. I say that all the time, and it's like I said, like if I'm more familiar with it, I'm more willing to kind of toe the edges. But this one, like I said, this one, I understand like the basics in a lot of terms, but like I said, that's why. So this is my limitation, not yours. So just so you know, that's why we've been tiptoeing. Just so you know, you're amazing, Jen. Lots of amazing comments in the chat about how smart you are, and I concur. You're the best. I appreciate the phone call. Always blowing up brains and taking things to where they should be.
And y'all have a great night. And I think that you can't talk about the Knights Templar without talking about the assassins, the order of the assassins of the Hashem, or the Sicarii, because they learned their craft from them. They share the same exact symbols and same Bushido laws of the Japanese. When they were that's where chivalry comes from for the Western world. And we don't have to be afraid of these. We should accept that the world itself, that's how the Renaissance came about, was the melding of all these different belief systems and the acceptance of it in a golden age. Out of the dark ages where everyone was being, where life expectancy was like 35 years old. That's where this comes out of, and where the light basically is shining. Now, it gets really strange today, but I think it's lucky that we have the world we have today, that we can look at all things. Where at once there was a time where you couldn't say one word without being cut down. So there's a bit to be said for the creation of the Western world and for the melding of the East and the West in this collaborative way. They've done good, but they've done some bad too, like all people and like all groups. But I think it's a very interesting topic. Love the show tonight, and it's wonderful.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate the call. Last comment in the chat, TN Freemason says, "This woman is brilliant." Jen, you're the best. Thanks for the phone call. Always a pleasure. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great night. Thanks a lot. You too. Jennifer, by the way, has a YouTube channel. If you're like, hey, I could listen to Jen all day, which is what people were saying in the chat there. She's got a YouTube channel. Check it out. Links in the description down below. She just moved and is going to get active back on her channel. And hopefully I'll be on her channel as well very soon. So, hey, scroll down. It says, follow Jennifer here. Follow Jennifer here. Go do the thing. Wow. Holy shit. What do you know about that stuff, Axel? Like I said, this is not a strength of mine, all right? And so me, when I have a strength of mine, I'm a little more willing to kind of toe those lines, like I was telling Jennifer. But what do you think about what she said? So in those terms, I don't know enough about it to say, yeah. It's Jennifer. I trust her. I trust her knowledge base, and I trust her take, because she's been here a long time and she's never like popped off like sideways about anything. So what's your idea on what she described there? And then we'll wrap this up. I know you got to bounce because it's getting late for you too, but yeah, go right ahead.
Well, it is. I didn't bring up the Baphomet Muhammad connection. It is like the general consensus is that somehow it's an Old French corruption of the word Muhammad, mostly because that connection doesn't really have anything to do with the like modern take on Baphomet, where he's a weird androgynous goat guy. Just not associations people have with the Prophet Muhammad. And also I don't really, and I could be wrong. I haven't read the transcripts or anything, but I don't really think that King Philip IV was accusing them of secretly becoming Muslim, basically. So I think, like, in context, they were using it as the name of some unknown thing. Although it is, I do agree that it probably, the name comes from an Old French way of saying Muhammad, which as I said, might be where there's a kernel of truth to the heresy story, because they really were exposed to a lot of Muslim thought. So maybe the Prophet Muhammad somehow made its way into their belief system or their religious beliefs. I guess. I mean,
well, in those terms, right? So if you're like, look, a doctrine is a doctrine, and if you step outside the doctrine, you're the demon, right? So like, if you mix the two things, it's unequivocal in that sense of like, burning at the stake sort of thing, right? So it doesn't seem to be too out of right the paces here. I think.
No, but when they were accusing them of worshiping Baphomet, they were accusing them of worshiping like this particular head they had, which I don't think anyone thought that like they had the head of Muhammad or something. So I do think in context that their accusers thought that it was some entity separate from the prophet, but like I agree that like the name probably came from that. That's just sort of why I hadn't brought it up, because it was that's sort of my view on it. I mean, I obviously could be wrong, but that's sort of because they were accusing them of worshiping a specific thing that they had, not like they had secretly become Muslim.
Yeah, no, and that's what I'm saying. So like literally when I was reading, I put all my links here, all the stuff I read some other stuff, and I was like, started getting into the weeds of too much to me, right? Like I don't want to have too much to talk about, because it'll confuse myself, but then also confuse like the linearity of the show from start to finish. So once I kind of got into those weeds, I was like, I see it, no, I don't want to do that, right? Because I saw where it was heading. That's all, and that's what I'm saying. So like, if I learned more about it and I could speak intelligently about it, I would, but I can't. And you guys know me. Look, I'm not like the pinnacle of anything, but if I don't know something, I'll be very careful, right? If let's say that in human terms, you know some things and you know some other things, and you know a little bit more about some things, but a little less about some other things. If I'm in that little less about some other things, I'm not going to take chances. You know what I'm saying? For obvious reasons. It's sort of that Dunning-Kruger like kind of hip shooting, speaking from, trying to extrapolate your experience onto things that you just don't get. That's all. So like I said, in so by the way, any shortcoming in this conversation tonight is my fault. Nobody else's. It's my fault, because I wanted to make sure we were clear and set in a particular way. Axel and I kind of kicked it around before and just agreed this was the best way, not because of him, because of me. And so, again, like always, all the praise of this show goes to all the amazing people that contribute and call in. Any criticisms you guys have, it's on me. Okay, so please, if you're like boo and hiss and send me like dirty emails, troubledmindsradio@gmail.com. Discord, troubledminds.org, click the Discord link. It's fine. Like, I'm not scared about not knowing things. I'm a little more worried, not scared, worried about thinking I know things and being able to sort of speak out of turn about them, right? That's what I mean. So that's all. So it's okay. We're here, Axel. We're at the end, bro. We made it. How you feeling, man? We're at the end.
I'm
Holy
fine.
Shit, man. How's Xander? How are you feeling?
He's sleeping on his bed.
Nice. Nice. All right. So what's your final take here? Before we cut you out of here and say thank you very much, Axel, for saving my ass and having like a amazing thing. And by the way, we kind of did it on short notice for Axel. He was like ready last week, but I was like, hey, it's Friday the 13th. This past week, this show would have been ideal on Friday the 13th for that, execute order 66 sort of reason.
Oh, that is true.
Yeah, so we did kind of step it up a moment, because I knew Tuesday was going to be the UFO report. We couldn't do it Tuesday. We would have to push it to Wednesday. Monday was the best time, and Axel made it happen, so I appreciate you very much. What's your final thought on all this? Every fucking thing we did or whatever, man. You do your thing.
I don't know. I don't know if I have one. I think
what the fuck?
I'm all right not having a wrap up.
You're all right not having a wrap-up? All right. That's fine. That's fine by me. My wrap-up is this. Axel Steele, a good friend of mine, follow this dude. Check him out. Link is in the description down below. You can follow him on Twitter and go. This is the thing too about this is the best part about Axel Steele. He'll confirm for me. I met him on Twitter by accusing him of being a Chinese spy. I've told the story several times.
That's true.
I did. I literally did. And so, like, I came at him like a belligerent asshole with no manners, like internet people do, right? And he was like, "Oh, hey, no, I'm not that guy." And I was like, "No, you totally are." And he's like, "No, I'm not." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever. Fuck you," right? I didn't say fuck you, but it was kind of that, like, whatevs, right? DMs and everything. Then he calls in the next week to my UFO show, and he's like talking UFOs. And now Axel's here. That's what I'm saying.
It was COVID. It was COVID. It was early COVID-19.
It was early COVID, and I recall actually, and you were talking about the first time I had heard about herd immunity. You were talking about it. Yeah, I recall. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, hey, like this is the way you make friends. You accuse them of things they're not. Boom. And look, if they're greater than you, they get past that. And they become your friends. I appreciate you very much, Axel. Thanks for peeling out your time. Thanks for cramming and reading some books like you're doing homework for us. It's very much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Right on. There you go. Get the fuck out of here, Axel. He said he had to dip at midnight. That's 2 minutes from now. We got you out 2 minutes early. Unless you got anything to add. I'm just trying to cut you out.
I'm fine for a little bit. If you were gonna, I'll talk to Kelly if he's gonna come on. But otherwise, yes. I'll dip out.
I was about to do that. All right, let's go to Kelly in Colorado. Thanks for being cool with that. Thanks for being patient, Kelly. Go right ahead. What do you think, my man? Don't take us down the rabbit hole too deep. If you don't get me in trouble and get taken off of YouTube. How are you, bro? Kelly in Colorado.
Oh man, good. How you guys doing it?
Oh shit! Now you've done it, Kelly. What's up, bro? Welcome to Troubled Minds.
All right, man. With this subject, I'm down around well, the most thing for that I gathered for the whole the Templars, right, was more or less, like with Jennifer, I agree with her. These guys were more or less mercenaries. I mean, I don't beat around the bush when I'm trying to glamorize it or even try to put it in any kind of different way.
Kelly,
mercenaries.
Real quick. We're gonna cut you off on glamorize it. Your internet is freaking out. You sound like a robot. Is there anything you can do to fix that real quick?
Oh, my bad. I was probably moving away from it, but
okay.
For me, it
sounds better. Go ahead.
Yeah, for me, it was more, everybody, it was back then, so it was like more or less a holy war, and it was more or less people just trying to survive, it was, it was through religions, at that time. So you had to pick a side, right? Muslim, or whatever was happening at the time. But when I look at some of this stuff, right, some of the time frames, I'm not gonna go with the Templars, right? What all they did, right? Because everything was pretty shitty back then. History was, there was a bunch of killing and all that other shit back and forth, right? It was just, like I said, for me, it was just it was survival is what more or less for me. Looking at it, sometimes you not agree with something, but you lost, so you're handing over something, so all your people's not being slaughtered. But for instance, the whole the Ark of the Covenant, and that's kind of surrounding the Templars, right? For me, I think the time frames are a little, actually not a little off. They're a few, almost 1,000 years off, right? So because we're gonna go with like King Solomon's temple, right? Solomon's temple was, when he conquered Jerusalem and he made the temple, right? It was actually designed to house the Ark of the Covenant, right? If I'm not mistaken. And so the whole point of that, right? So when that happened, that was what, like, it was conquered, it was destroyed by King Nebuchadnezzar II, right? And that was probably like, 568 BC, BCE. This is right around there, right? In the 500s, right? So, and this is BCE. The Crusades didn't happen until about in the 1100s. Now getting their hands on it, this is what I think, okay? So if I'm looking through, for me, I researched that whole area through, all through, like, or Iraq, and which was called names at the time, but Nebuchadnezzar was known as Nebuchadnezzar the Great. He was Nebuchadnezzar II, right? So he's the one who took down King Solomon's temple, destroyed it, and it's even known that it says that he took all the treasure. For me, I think everybody's looking in the wrong direction. I think that thing, if it took all the treasure and the Ark of the Covenant was part of that, I think it went north, right, to Iraq. Because that's the whole area of, like, through the Bible and everything else is all in that area, which is Iraq, right? All of it. They talk about so much of Egypt and then Jerusalem, but most of that stuff is all talking about in Iraq. Now, what's interesting to me is that Nebuchadnezzar, right? Who said he remember Saddam Hussein? He said he was a reincarnation of King Nebuchadnezzar. And then we went in for no fucking reason. I mean, out of the blue after his dad tried, and then his son went in there, Bush second, right? He went in there, and what do? Right? We supposed to be looking for, mass destruction, right? Weapons of mass destruction. But we didn't find anything. And what do? We started pillaging all those areas. And the large ziggurat that was there that was, supposed to be Nebuchadnezzar's, and then Saddam Hussein, actually, he was rebuilding it. And I mean, like, generals, everybody, they don't really even talk about the inside of what that thing looks like. Let alone, I mean, you can see the outside, but I don't know. I have never yet to see. I haven't even looked. I mean, you get some like paper drawings, but there's no really know what that thing looks like on the inside. And for me, Nebuchadnezzar taking down King Solomon where it was housed, I mean, and taking all the treasure, that makes more sense than anything else that it goes down through history. I mean, I just kind of do with that, like with the king, with the Templars, Knight Templars, though. I think it was all about, gold. Once the time when the king didn't need them anymore, he wanted their heads. All right. So yeah, they had to kind of go underground and do, all those ancient teachings, kind of like what Jennifer was talking about. All things were revered as ancient teachings, and a lot of that stuff actually comes through Egypt, which is actually a follow through from Sumerian, right? I mean, that's just, the names and everything else. I can go down through that. We don't even have enough time for all that. But the information that's kind of interesting to me is that whole link with Nebuchadnezzar, and then the whole war that we supposedly went in there for. For me, it was all. I don't know, man. We went there for a different reason, and if we're gonna drink maybe juice, that's the juice I'm drinking. Is that thing went north, right? If we're looking for something like that into those effects, those articles. I'm not gonna talk. I don't know about the other things that people might be looking for, biblical artifacts. But if we're talking about the Ark. And what's interesting, I was talking with Michelle about was, because Nebuchadnezzar was born in the city of Ur, which is actually, back at the time, biblical, when they first were talking about something, they were,
You're cutting out, Kelly. Nebuchadnezzar was born in the city of Ur, and you, just to let you know.
Sorry, I'm trying to walk back.
Do you hey Kelly, I got this thing right. I got this thing when I'm talking on the phone, I pace like a madman. Do you do the same thing? I pace like a crazy man. It's crazy.
I try to get, it's just where this apartment's at. It's kind of a shitty area right next to a hospital and shit too, so they got a lot of helicopters coming in back and forth a lot for some reason. I don't know, man. There's a lot of stuff going on around here.
Gotcha. Okay, you're back on. Everything's perfect. So you're saying Nebuchadnezzar, born in Ur, you went. You're back. Go right ahead.
Okay, Nebuchadnezzar, he was born in the city of Ur, right, which is Iraq, right? Those are the cities that I was just kind of explaining that they kind of, mainstream, science or archaeology wants to, at first they were saying that all these places are magical places. They didn't even, they're like anything else, it was just a tale. It was nothing until they started digging the shit up. That's when they go. So, like with the Templars, right? I even like with their teachings and stuff like that. When I talk about some of that stuff, Jennifer was correct with some of that. I believe too, because that's where I kind of find a lot of that stuff where she was talking about is, they were, they were mercenaries, man. That's mostly what their job was, and they were fighting for the crown. That's what they were doing. But when the crown was done, that was it. They wanted their heads. I mean, I think that's if I'm not mistaken with that. If I'm correct on that, right?
I don't know. Like I said, a lot of that sort of Mesopotamian to like Middle Ages is all lost on me. I know some of it. I know the basics, but there's a whole lot that I don't, and that's why it's amazing that we do in this format to kind of get. I don't know, Axel. You got a take on that? What he just said?
About if the Templars were mercenaries?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not the word I used to. I mean, they did seem to take their vows of poverty reasonably seriously. At least the knights did, maybe less so the clerics. I mean, they were more like money makers than sell swords. It's not like you would hire them out for particular things. They had like their own source of income, like they, but I mean, I'm not going to go to bat for them as being like great people or something.
No, I'm talking like because if we were in this because you would kind of have to talk about what time frame, right? Because when they first started to where they ended up, I mean, of course you're gonna find that's what's the whole thing to me too is like when you start to get into like the this island up here in Canada, right, where they were trying to dig for it. I think that's all about Spanish gold, because they were probably running if they did come here to the Americas, right? And they did, let's say they did go up, and that whole island is part of it. And if there is a treasure, if there's something weird like that, because it's pretty. To me, the story is kind of weird about that. It sounds like a place where you would want to bury something there. Nowadays, I mean, the new series is supposed to be coming out and saying that they found gold and something amazing. Well, we'll just have to see. But for me, a lot of it seems to me that stories were over there, because the crown and all that shit, man, they're all in cahoots. Just like you were saying earlier, too, was, the crown, and then, you have the king and it was just religion. But even religion back then, too, was all corrupt. It was all ran by gangsters, man. So it's just like the kings, if who could take out each other, and that's who's going to rule. And with the religion back then, too, was the exact same way.
I mean, no disagreements here.
No disagreements here. Hey, look. Hey, Kelly and Axel just had a no disagreements here moment. Hey, how about that? Holy shit. I never thought this would happen. Kelly, okay, so all of that said, though, where did they go? Do you think?
I mean, I don't know.
They were wiped off the map, or do you think there's some sort of like secret society still in existence today?
Okay, for now for that, like I can't say, and like I'm more, like that is not really my it wasn't, I like I said, I researched them, I kind of went down that rabbit hole a little bit. I don't know, listening to everybody else, with their, I learned a little bit more of, some of the stuff, but I do agree with, some of the ancient stuff like that, because, you were again, it was kingdom against kingdom. They were trying to like overtake. It wasn't just, trying to like protect their own kingdom, like Nebuchadnezzar. The reason why he called them the Great is because they were taken out. I mean, or like Genghis Khan, it was just a massive. It was just, they believed in something great. Some, of course, your enemies are going to have a different opinion about you, because like Nebuchadnezzar was known as one of the greatest kings that ever lived, but also, the people from Jerusalem have they had a different thought about him. You know, like he was the most cruelest because of what he did with King Solomon's temple and all that stuff, and then took, the treasures and all that. Everybody's going to have a different opinion of it. Again, just like you were saying, who writes history is going to be the winners. It's not the losers. And sometimes, if you look through history, sometimes the losers, I wouldn't even say the losers, but, there's two different sides of every story and how it all went down and the reasons for it, but again, how do we look at it? We kind of have to look at it in both ways. That's what I always do. And, that's where you leave that judgment out of everything, because you gotta, even though you tend to try to be right, you think even though I try to think that, most of the stuff, I don't try to say I'm right. I just want to be right with the words that I'm saying. So like to say where these people went, I don't know, man, for me, because I don't, that's not my research like for that. But for me, if the stories are correct, I don't know, man, maybe of course these secret societies, especially here in the United States, there was an influx of all different types of people from around the world, not just, it was like an up for grabs almost, there was people all over the place that were coming here and for different reasons, being, get away from perjury of, religion, freedom of speech, that whole thing, that's the reason why. But at the same time, they were wiping out other, people that was already here. But, that's history. So to say where they're here, who knows, man? Like, I don't know. I didn't know about that one in South America or not. Yeah, in Brazil they did. What was he talking about? Where the temple, there's all kinds of secret sects like that are all over the place. And like I said, I couldn't say like you. I don't really have the touch of base on the information for that. To say whether or not,
It's complicated. Like I said, I got so far, I was like, "Fuck, I can't get into all this other shit," because it spins off like south of history, meaning like in the past, it spins off north in history from where they're at. It's like okay, well, like we gotta have a basis, don't we, Axel? We gotta have a basis. So before we get the hell out of here, what's your take on what Kelly said, and also what about Oak Island and those let's say Rosalind Chapel and those sorts of theories? You think it's all horse shit, or do you think maybe it's a basis of some sort of truth?
Well, Rosalind Chapel I think makes a little more sense just because we know there were Templars in Scotland, whereas I think the odds of like I said, I think the odds of the Templars making across the Atlantic Ocean probably pretty slim. It doesn't necessarily mean there's no treasure on Oak Island, but I'd be kind of genuinely shocked if if it was a Templar treasure. I guess it'd be a nice surprise, but it's because also if they did come all the way over here to bury a treasure, presumably, something else would have gotten what they buried the treasure here and then all left or something. That doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Figured there'd be some remains or the boats they brought over or whatever. But no, and I don't really have any, I basically sort of agree with what Kelly was saying. That all sounded about right to me. So, but I do think it's really hard.
Go ahead.
It's really hard. It is really hard to. We obviously don't know if these groups are still around, right? Or what would it mean for them to still be around too? I guess, but we obviously we don't. The whole point of secret societies is they're secret, so it's tough to tell.
Amen to that. Amen to that. We wouldn't know, would we? But it is fun to speculate. Thanks again. You're the best, Axel. I appreciate you very much, Kelly. Let's wrap this up. Axel. Let's get the fuck out of here. Let's do it, Kelly.
Yes, sir.
What else you got?
Great show tonight, Axel. Like I said, I listened to you and Jennifer. It was kind of like I learned a little bit more, but like I said, it's not really too much of my cup of tea. It's like, because I'm in different directions right now. Again, I've done the whole, kind of like what most people have done, maybe a little bit deeper, but it's a very interesting thing, man, because you gotta it actually, for me though, it's kind of like what Jennifer, really quick, just she was saying like how those ancient stuff like that, and a lot of that stuff does come from those areas, and they wouldn't, it's not always have to say that it was Muslim. I mean, it was Babylonian and Assyrian, and then Mesopotamian, all that stuff, down in through Egypt. I mean, all those old ancient everybody had some, they were, all that stuff was type of stuff was secret, when they were even just making swords, all that stuff was all type of secret type stuff, not everybody's allowed in some of the stuff, I guess, that's the way they were thinking too. That's where a lot of that teaching was, kind of through Egypt, and it was, that's where a lot of people talk about, that was over from Greece and Romans, they all went through Egypt, because Egypt is a lot older than most people I would believe to think, but at the times to then, where they were getting enlightenments for them was through Egypt, they went all through those ancient teachings, and, we can all speculate where all that stuff came from too, but yeah, man, it's a great show. A lot, I enjoyed it, and see you guys tomorrow.
Appreciate it, brother. Kelly, you're the best. Go ahead, Axel.
I was just going to say, as people say, Cleopatra is closer in time to us than she was to the Great Pyramids being built.
That's true.
And also creepy. And like I said, this is why we have sort of the open source format of this show. Again, I can't thank Axel enough. You're the best, bro. He volunteered. He's like, hey, like we were talking about this sort of off the cuff in a post show chat. He pops in from time to time. He does tarot readings, by the way. If you want a tarot reading by Axel, come join the Discord, troubledminds.org. Click the Discord link. He's like, oh, Mike doesn't like that. I don't. We're just not going to do it on the show, but you're totally welcome to come and get a free reading by Axel if you want to do that. But it's just one of those things, like a kind of you draw the lines of like, this is what Troubled Minds is. We're going to do this on Troubled Minds, and hey, I'm not the arbiter of anything. I don't know anything about anything, and I think that's actually the probably the best way to take it, because you learn more and more every day. And I learned a ton tonight, so thank you, Axel. Thanks to Kelly and James and Jennifer and Night Stalker, all the people that called in tonight, and of course, super mucho thanks to you, Axel. Let's get the fuck out, bro. Go take the dog out. Go take the dog out.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go to bed. But thanks for having me. Thanks, audience, for listening to me. I'll catch you guys around sometime.
There it goes. Follow Axel on Twitter. You can find him twitter.com/Axel Steele, just like it's spelled right there on the damn thing. I got the thing. Go to sleep, buddy. Axel's a good friend of mine, good friend of ours. You can find him in the after chat as well. Like I said, if you haven't joined the Discord, you're missing out. Troubledminds.org. Click the Discord link. It's a chat client. It's a voice client. It's totally free. You can share ideas. You can share just the things. The things. My face is frozen, says Tam Bam. Hey, my face freezes all from time to time. I'm a robot after all. I'm a robot. All right, let's get the fuck out. So this is the way this works, right? So if you want to help the show, there are a number of ways to do that. Number 1, number 2, number 3. Real quick, shout out. We got a new Patreon today. Thank you very much to Darren. I'm not going to read your last name and your email and whatnot, but Darren, I see you. Thanks for the Patreon. Very generous. I appreciate it. Thanks for appreciating what we do here on this show. Thank you for that. If you want to help the show, there are ways. Patreon, links in the description. Rockfin, what's up? Shout out Rockfin fam. Rockfin is the next YouTube. Rockfin is it's not censorship. It's decentralized. It's based on a crypto platform. It's go check out Rockfin if you don't. Sherry's over there. Tam Bam's over there. What's up? Ronald's over there. The Robert's over there. We got Luz Maria's over there. What's up? I see it. What's up? We got you guys know Ronald's over there. Sherry and Vicky, and of course Donna. You name it. All the folks we're talking about over there. Ronald, there it is. Hey, look, Rockfin, you can sub up over there. You get not just Troubled Minds premium content. You get tons of. You get Sam Tripoli. You get Crow 777. You get Abby Martin, Empire Files. You get Michael Tracy. You get on and on and on. There's so many people over there. Jimmy Dore. It's the best value. You can sub up right below in the if you pay $10 a month, they take like a tiny bit of it and send the rest to me in crypto. It's hard to argue with that, right? So anyway, that Patreon, that Rockfin, and then we got Twitch, of course. You guys know Twitch, Monday, Friday, the news show. And of course, look, if you don't want to spend money, I understand. If you do also and want some swag, troubledfans.com. You will not find me oiled up on a fuzzy couch. You will find Troubled Minds merch, troubledfans.com. Go there. Do the thing. There's hats, there's shirts, there's a patch now, there's a mouse pad, there's stickers, there's all kinds of shit. Go check it out. Selling some stuff over there, so I appreciate you guys very much for that. If you don't want to spend money and you want to help the show, it's super easy. Spread the word. We can beat the algorithms by just spreading the word, right? That's the thing, right? Like, we are not beholden to the computers and what they tell us to want and tell us what to think. Hey, spread the word. And also, you can listen to the podcast feed, Spotify, iTunes, anywhere you find your podcasts for free. There's ads baked in, and if you listen to an old show, there's over 400 episodes. 400 episodes on the podcast feed. There you go. Please don't forget to follow all the amazing people that contribute to the show. It's not just me. I'm just little old me. And as you know, I have my limitations, and I'm freely admitting those limitations, okay? And you saw that tonight. But the point is to follow the amazing folks that actually make this show happen and actually make this show what it is. It's not just me. It's us. I'm me. You're you. And together we're us. Have a fantastic night, guys. Thank you so much for being part of this as it ends. I know the music's done, but I got more to say. Just a couple quick things. Be sure. Be strong. Be true. Thank you for listening. From our troubled minds to yours, have a great night. We'll be back tomorrow. Ash, maybe. They're having the UFO hearings tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Approximately, 9 hours from now, right? 8.5, 9 hours. So we'll be talking about that tomorrow. I'll have clips. I'll have all the things. And there you go. So more of that. Thank you so much for being part of this. I'm out. Michael Strange out. We'll catch you guys in the after show chat, and you can join that at troubledminds.org. Click the Discord link, and we're out. Oh, have a great night.